Chapter 1. Memories of a Pill God. Who am I? Longchen. I look down on the very heavens, the arrogant nine firmaments peerless pill god, Longchen. I am someone who is cheated and bullied by everyone, a spineless good-for-nothing incapable of cultivating, Longchen. His mind was filled with confusion, and at the same time severe pain came from all over his body. Longchen was unable to stop his mind's chaotic thoughts and emitted a pained groan. Chen, you finally awakened? Thank God, your mom was worried sick for you. If you want to brag about how strong you are then fine, but why did you have to go duel with those people? A kind and gentle voice sounded beside Longchen's ear. The voice was full of happiness and comfort, but towards the end it also became choked with emotion. Longchen slowly opened his eyes. His blurry vision gradually became clearer, and a woman's face appeared before him. The woman appeared to be in her 30s and she was extremely beautiful. However, in the corner of her eyes were some deep wrinkles that did not match up with her young age. Currently this woman was tearfully looking at Longchen with eyes that were full of love, making Longchen's heart feel a burst of warmth. Child, you scared your mom to death. As the woman spoke her eyes became even redder and her tears streamed down. Mom? Longchen looked at this familiar yet strange face. He doubtingly said this one word, his face filled with confusion. Child, don't scare your mom. Don't you recognize me? The woman's face immediately became panicked. At this moment, an elderly man appeared beside the woman. He examined Longchen. He said, Mrs. Longchen suffered a blow to the back of his head, so it's possible he will need to rest a bit to recover his memories. Don't be too worried. Just now I gave the young master some medicine. The medicinal effects still haven't completely dissolved, so just let the young master rest for a bit longer. Mrs. Long looked worriedly at Longchen. Reluctantly she nodded her head and she followed the elderly man out of the room. Longchen heard the elderly man in the distance softly advising the woman, Mrs. Long, the fact that young Master Long managed to return with his life is already infinitely lucky. Don't force it too much. Mrs. Long tremblingly replied, Master Alchemist's meaning is that my son will. The elderly man who had been called an alchemist sighed. The young lord's hindbrain received an acute shock. To tell the truth, being able to wake up is already extremely lucky, however the repercussions will definitely still be very severe. Losing his memory is quite possible in this situation. The two people gradually walked further and further away so Longchen could no longer hear it clearly, but what was barely audible to him was the sound of Mrs. Long's sobbing. Longchen gazed blankly at the ceiling above as he felt the severe pains throughout his body, especially at the back of his head which was bursting with a swollen, aching pain. Just what happened? I'm Longchen and so Mrs. Long is my flesh and blood mother. How could I have such an unfamiliar feeling? And all these confusing memories, where did they come from? I have memories that I'm an arrogant, exceedingly powerful person, but at the same time I remember that I'm an often bullied and extorted bitter trash. Pill God Longchen? Trash Longchen? Which is the real me? Am I the Pill God's reincarnation? Or am I a fusion of the Pill God's spirit with a trash weakling? Longchen's mind was full of endless questions. Whatever, it doesn't matter. I am Longchen. If I'm the Pill God then or not doesn't mean anything right now. The most important thing is that I'm still alive. I have two sets of memories that have mixed together. How would I even try to fix this kind of insane problem? Instead, what I need to do now is let myself recover as quickly as possible. Sensing his body's current condition, he quickly located many fractures. He had 3 broken ribs, 1 arm broken in 2 places, and most severe of all, his hindbrain was injured to the point where a large portion of his scalp had caved in. He had definitely been victim to an extremely vicious assault. Even not talking about the shape, its color was completely black and there wasn't even a trace of luster. If it wasn't emitting a very faint medicinal aroma, then Longchen might even suspect it was a ball of sheep dung. After staring at the thing in his hand for a long time, Longchen finally sighed. Someone who had lost over 80% of the medicinal pill's essence could still be called a master? Long Chen bewilderedly wondered how someone had managed to create something that could become so soft and mushy. Pills could be divided into 5 grades: low grade, middle grade, high grade, top grade, and peerless grade. As for the pill in his hand, it couldn't even count as one of the 5 grades. Long Chen suddenly realized that this was just a defective good. It was a trash pill. Normally pill masters would definitely not sell these kinds of medicinal pills since they couldn't afford to lose their customers. Oftentimes they would be turned into medicinal liquids or just directly thrown out. Young lord, don't daydream. In order to obtain this precious pill, Mrs. Long already sold off her own precious jeweler. You should hurry and take it, urged Bauer. Long Chen couldn't help but to feel some pain in his heart. His impression of his mother was that she loved him very dearly to the point where it was like drowning in love and pampering. It reached the point where his mother would basically never refuse any of his requests. His mother had done everything and anything for him. She had given birth to him while she was still young. She had grown up innately beautiful, but now she was barely 30-something years old and already had wrinkles in the corner of her eyes. Seeing those deep wrinkles, Long Chen knew that she had already sacrificed far too much for him. Looking at the medicinal ball in his hand, he observed that although it was a defective good, the medicinal ingredients were still not bad. Although impurities took up over 80% of it, it wouldn't have any problems healing his injuries. Taking the ball of medicine, Long Chen ordered Bauer to not leak any news of him out, excluding his mother of course. Although Bauer didn't really understand, she still trusted Long Chen and obediently nodded. After taking the medicine, although Long Chen had no way to use cultivation to absorb the medicinal strength, he managed to guide the medicinal energy to his wounds by using his formidable spiritual strength, making his speed of recovery extremely quick. The second day, Long Chen slowly opened his eyes and he had a smile plastered on his mouth as he exercised his muscles. Excellent. Although that medicine was pretty bad, medicinal ingredients themselves were of a high quality. Other than my hindbrain, the majority of my injuries have already healed, and the amount of energy left is more than enough to heal completely. He slowly walked towards the mirror. Looking at his reflection, he saw a nothing out of the ordinary handsome youngster with eyebrows like swords and bright eyes. Long Chen took a deep breath. From today onwards, I, Long Chen, will no longer be the previous Long Chen. I will rise above others. Although his body was still slightly weak, walking was no longer a problem. Long Chen left the room and saw that the sun had already risen from the east. After pondering deeply for an hour, he called over Bauer and gave her a list of medicinal ingredients for her to find. However, Bauer's expression became a bit embarrassed. Long Chen wondered what it was before quickly realizing that the current Long family was extremely hard-pressed for money, and Bauer had no method to get a loan. Otherwise his mother would not have had to sell off her own jewelry, a part of her exceptionally precious dowry. The present Long family had already fallen into extremely dire straits. Feeling around in his pocket, he found that he had just over 80 silver coins. Although this wasn't a lot, it was enough to buy those medicinal ingredients. Bauer worked diligently, and not even 2 hours later she had managed to buy the medicinal ingredients and returned home. Long Chen immediately set about to dividing and measuring them into different portions before boiling them in a large bowl. 6 hours later, a very thick medicinal liquid was releasing a medicinal aroma. When Long Chen saw the bowl with the cheap medicinal liquid, a smile appeared on his mouth. I, Long Chen, will rise above others, starting from this one bowl of medicinal liquid. Chapter 2: Despicable Scum. The medicinal liquid entered into his stomach, and Long Chen hastily used his mind to guide the medicinal energy throughout his body, allowing it to merge into his bones. Normal martial artists would let the medicinal energy assimilate inside the dantian in order to absorb it, and only later would they spread it throughout their body. However, Long Chen didn't have a spirit root, and so his dantian was completely empty and had no way to store energy. The only thing he could do was allow the medicinal energy to scatter into every cell. Although this medicinal liquid was formed from only ordinary medicinal herbs, It displayed a surprisingly great medicinal effect after going through Long Chen's pairings and proportions. As the medicinal energy rushed throughout his body, countless pores opened up and every single cell seemed as if it had been in a state of suffocation as they all began to crazily absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Boom! A muffled explosion came from within Long Chen's body. His originally sealed meridians were all forced open and Long Chen couldn't stop himself from letting out a muffled groan. When others cultivated, they would use the Dantian's qi in order to little by little open up their meridians in a step-by-step manner which would not cause any pain. However, Long Chen couldn't do so, he could only borrow an outer energy source. This energy was like the ocean's water flowing into a river field. Its violent and ferocious power wasn't something that just anybody could withstand. This pain. I will definitely remember this pain. Long Chen gnashed his teeth. If it weren't for some person stealing his spirit root, how could he have been forced to choose such a crazy method? Bang bang bang. Continuous explosions echoed out from his body as his meridians opened up one by one. Every time a meridian channel was opened, intense pain would rack his body. When all his meridians were finally opened, Long Chen almost fainted into a coma. He had to rest for 2 full hours before he slowly revived himself. With the pain now past him, Long Chen felt that the pores from his toes to his head were all open, and with every single breath he took, he absorbed the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Excellent, I can finally practice cultivation now that my meridians have opened. Long Chen sensed his body's condition. With his meridians opened, he could absorb spiritual energy from heaven and earth through his pores in order to nourish his body to become stronger. I should first think of a method to make some money, Long Chen muttered to himself. Switching clothes, he left his room. At this time it was already past noon, but there were unexpectedly few people to be seen in his huge noble estate, making it seem like an extremely desolate place. Long Chen's father was the border suppression marquis, Jin Yuan Ho, and now was currently gone to the wild border. Long Chen and his mother had had to suffer many condescending gazes from everyone in the imperial capital over the past few years. Although they had the position of a noble family, but compared to before, they were completely destitute, and in their entire estate there were only 10 or so maids who did some part-time work for them since they couldn't afford employing more people. It could be said that in all the aristocracy, they were the family in the worst straits, and Long Chen himself was the most destitute of the poor. Phoenix Cry Empire was currently in a golden age of martial arts. Basically everyone practiced martial arts. But as it turned out, Long Chen's special physique meant he was incapable of practicing martial arts, making him someone that everyone would sneer at. But opposite to Long Chen was his father, Long Tianxiao. He was the strongest of his generation, and with him guarding the wild border, even if a barbarian tribe were to savagely attack, they would not have the ability to step even half a foot within the Phoenix Cry Empire. Long Tianxiao was the Phoenix Cry Empire's military god of this generation, whereas Long Chen was a trash who couldn't even enter qi sensing. It was impossible to prevent people from feeling that this tiger father had had a dog of a son. Countless people would jeer at him, but Long Chen wouldn't care. However, that day, Man Huangho's son, Zhou Yaoyang, had ridiculed Long Chen by saying that he wasn't his father's son. Long Chen's anger had immediately soared to the heavens. Zhou Yaoyang had obviously been insulting his mother as unfaithful. Long Chen's anger had even caused him to become a muddle-headed, and he had recklessly challenged his opponent to a duel. But his opponent was a strong person at the 7th heaven stage of qi condensation, while he was just an ordinary person incapable of even reaching qi sensing. He had basically been asking to be disgraced. As a result, he later was beat to the point of losing consciousness and almost dying. He was sent home, and the news caused Long Chen to be an object of ridicule for quite some time in the imperial capital. Leaving his noble estate, Long Chen went directly to the imperial capital's 100 herb market. That was the place where all kinds of precious medicinal ingredients were sold. Right now what he needed to do was to get an understanding of the medicinal herbs market situation. Along the road there were quite a few people, and when they recognized Long Chen they couldn't help but to point him out behind his back. However, Long Chen was already used to this. But at the same time, he bitterly smiled inside. His own father had suppressed the entire wild border, which was an amazing meritorious deed that protected the entire empire. However, what had he obtained for that? This mother-son duo had been left to suffer from bullying and humiliating stares from the imperial capital, and Long Chen had almost been beaten to death. How could this be considered repayment? A group of people that were protected by his father all gave his son condescending gazes. This was his repayment. Long Chen quickened his footsteps. Although he wasn't afraid of these kinds of stares, he would always end up a bit gloomy. But at this moment, his path was suddenly blocked by a group of people. "Aya, are you actually Long Chen? I heard you were beat to the point where you couldn't even recognize your own mom, so how are you so lively that you ran out today?" In front of Long Chen was a 16-year-old teen wearing gaudy clothes sneering at him with two guards. This person was also born as a noble heir in an aristocrat family and was called Li Hao. However, his position within the aristocracy was not high and his status was incomparable to Long Chen's. But in the Phoenix Cry Empire, nobility and status were only secondary. What was most important was still strength. Li Hao was standing right in the middle of the road, and if Long Chen wanted to go through, he would need to pass by him. If it was the previous Long Chen, he would have turned around and walked back, but today's Long Chen looked at Li Hao, shook his head, and sighed. People say even well-trained dogs know not to obstruct the road. Looks like you're not even as good as a dog. Long Chen, it seems you didn't remember the lesson I gave you last time. If you want to be beaten within an inch of your life again, then let's fight in the martial arena. Li Hao's expression changed before he once again taunted him. "That's why I said you were a dog. Just go eat crap with Zhou Yaoyang." Long Chen shook his head. He didn't want to waste his time on this kind of person. He needed to handle his own affairs, so he started to walk around him. "Long Chen, you are asking for death." Li Hao couldn't help but to become angry, not expecting that the always cowardly Long Chen would actually act in such an unyielding manner that basically didn't even pay attention to him. He stuck out his arms to bar Long Chen's path. Long Chen frowned slightly, but just as he was about to say more, a person walked over, and towards Li Hao he cursed, "Li Hao, you're the one asking for death. Just who do you think you are to dare threaten my brother?" The person who had come was an extremely tall 18-year-old. His height was especially extraordinary as he was 9 feet tall, which was taller than either of them by over a head and very intimidating. "Shi Feng, this isn't your business. It'd be best if you didn't meddle around." When Li Hao saw Shi Feng, all he could do was act tough even though he was weaker. Shi Feng was also a noble heir whose status was about the same as his. But Shi Feng was a strong person who had reached 8th heaven stage of qi condensation while he was only at the 3rd heaven stage of qi condensation. In addition, Shi Feng had an innate strength that meant that amongst people in the same rank as him, few were an equal match for him. Therefore, Li Hao didn't have the guts to challenge Shi Feng. "Brother Long Chen, I heard that bastard Zhou Yaoyang beat you up. How about I go help you vent your anger?" Shi Feng looked at Long Chen and his expression became indignant. Long Chen looked at the huge person in front of him, and his heart felt a bit of warmth. Shi Feng was the only one in the imperial capital who would consider him as his brother. "No thanks, my enmities are something that I will pay back myself. Just don't worry about it." Long Chen faintly laughed, patting Shi Feng's shoulder. When Shi Feng heard Long Chen say this, he thought that Long Chen might be worried about his image, and so he didn't raise the issue again. "Let's go, come with me for a stroll," Long Chen said with a smile, and he brought Shi Feng for a walk. When Li Hao saw the two of them consider him as just thin air, he couldn't help from angrily cursing, "Long Chen, you little bastard, if you have guts then you'll join me in a duel." They had only just walked a couple steps when Li Hao said this and they paused. From deep within Long Chen's eyes bubbled up a strong murderous intent and he slowly turned his head. "You want to have a duel with me?" Long Chen's voice was extremely cold. Each word he spoke was just like ice shards that caused people to tremble in their bones. Li Hao couldn't help but to shiver. For some reason he felt that today's Long Chen was a bit strange, but his big words had already been spoken, so if at this time he was to act like a coward, then he would become the entire imperial capital's laughingstock. Moreover, he was already used to bullying Long Chen over and over, so with those experiences, he ignored the trace of fear that arose in his heart. Not bad, you dare to accept the duel? Li Hao mocked in a loud voice. Not a problem, however I want to add some stakes, Long Chen said after a moment's thought. Adding stakes? Your Long family is already almost unable to feed yourselves, what are you going to take out as stakes? You could use your family's estate, or how about if you lose you'll become my slave? Li Hao coldly mocked. However, what he didn't notice was that in the corner of Long Chen's mouth was a callous smile that seemed to have some hidden intentions. Brother Shi, can you lend me your martial sword? Long Chen asked. Take it. Shi Feng did somewhat hate to part with it, but he still handed his sword over. Long Chen nodded, and he quietly recorded this favor into his heart. Towards Li Hao, he said, this martial sword isn't top quality, but it is still worth 8,000 gold coins. For today I'll just count it as 5,000 gold coins. If you win you can take the martial sword, but if you lose you have to give me 5,000 gold coins. How's that sound? Li Hao's heart shook. Shi Feng's sword was made from steel essence and was forged by a master. It was definitely worth at least 8,000 gold coins. Today this idiot Long Chen actually decided to use such a thing as a bet. He had long since started laughing cheerfully inside. Hit Mouth once again sneered, I don't know if should you lose whether someone will decide to back out and not own up. Don't worry, Shi Feng will guarantee it. Shi Feng coldly smiled. Good, then let's go to the martial arena to sign the contract. If today I don't beat the teeth out of you, then in the future I wouldn't be Li Hao. Li Hao couldn't help from being extremely exuberant as he high-spiritedly spoke. Long Chen's face was still calm, however within his eyes appeared some darkness. Li Hao was just one of Zhou Yaoyang's dogs, so he was never paid any attention by Long Chen. However, now they were always plotting against him. Just what kind of hidden conspiracy was there? However, no matter what kind of conspiracy it was, the truth would always come to light one day. Long Chen walked directly to the martial arena outside the imperial capital. Chapter 3. Revealing his sharp side. In the Phoenix Cry Empire, martial customs were very popular, and so some disputes were unavoidable. Thus, a life and death stage had been built outside the imperial capital where people could resolve their personal differences. As long as both parties agreed and signed the martial arena contract, then once they entered into the martial arena, even if they killed their opponent they wouldn't receive any punishment from the imperial capital. During most days this place was filled with a bustling crowd and today was no different. However, after a couple matches had ended, two youngsters walked onto the stage and caused an uproar. Isn't that person Long Chen? Why would he come here? Yeah, yesterday he was almost beat to death. Isn't it weird for him to be here today? I bet he doesn't want to live anymore and wants to get someone to beat him to death here. The senior Long Tianshao might be Zhen Yuan Ho and be called this generation's military god, but the people who gave him the title military god were the poor people who had to suffer through wars and conflicts. In the imperial capital, which was filled with rich people all in peace and prosperity, people didn't place the Long Tianshao who was born in a commoner family on the same level as them. And thus, few people in the entire imperial capital had respect for Long Chen. Long Chen, you piece of trash, why did you come back? Aren't you just holding up the work for no reason? Who would want to see your martial arts? Hurry and beat it. Yeah, if you want to kill yourself then find somewhere without people. No one wants to see such a piece of trash, so stop wasting our time. In just a moment the audience of several hundred people were all cursing loudly. None of them hid their disgust for Long Chen. However, in an unremarkable corner further away, two maidens wearing veils were raptly watching him. Sister, that one is your fiancé? Why does he seem so lacking? There's not even the slightest fluctuations around his body, observed one of the maidens disappointedly. It wasn't for Dad acting selfishly, he wouldn't have arranged my marriage back when I still wasn't even born. It's truly irritating, responded the other maiden. On the martial arena, Long Chen didn't even notice the two maidens who were spying on him, and towards the shouts and screams, he also did not respond at all. He merely indifferently looked at Li Hao. Li Hao pointed out the people's uproar and sneered. See? You're an unwelcome trash, and if you were smart you would just bash your head in and die. Long Chen continued to only indifferently stare at him, not saying a word. The sound of a bell rang out, signaling the start of the duel. When that bell tolled, life and death were separated by only a fine line. Due to the tolling of the bell, the originally rowdy crowd became silent. After all, it was a life and death battle. Who would know just when someone's life would end? Sister, this fiancé of yours doesn't seem to have any cultivation base, while his opponent is at the third heaven stage of chi condensation. Aren't you worried? The maiden asked. What's the point of me being worried? Him dying is fine. It doesn't have anything to do with me. The other maiden indifferently snorted. But although she said these words, she had already taken out an extremely strange and ancient silk net. Hee, don't say you don't care, you've already taken out your martial weapon. Looks like you do still care. And you know, although his cultivation talent is trash, he's not that bad looking. How about if you don't want him you can just give him to me? The maiden laughingly joked. How can a person be just randomly given to you? If you like him, you can wait for me to withdraw from the marriage arrangement. After that you can do whatever you want, responded the other woman angrily. Hee. On the martial arena, Long Chen from beginning to end had remained as calm as water, and when compared to yesterday's him who was gnashing his teeth in complete anger, the difference made him seem like a completely different person. Long Chen, with your death near, you decided to become calm? Don't worry, due to the stakes you proposed, I won't beat you to death today. Li Hao was extremely arrogant and confident. You sure say a lot of crap. Hurry up and come at me, I still have things to do later, responded Long Chen in a slightly impatient manner. Because the entire audience was very quiet, every single word of Long Chen's managed to enter the crowd's ears, and in a split second everyone watching the martial arena burst into jeering derision. Li Hao, what are you still waiting for? Hurry up and beat this kid to death. He's really causing us to feel too embarrassed for him. Some of the people present recognized Li Hao, so they called out to him. A cold sneer appeared on Li Hao's face, and no longer hesitating, the power of his third heaven stage of chi condensation completely exploded out. His foot pressed down slightly on the martial arena, and he immediately shot out towards Long Chen, punching out his fist. When Li Hao started attacking, the crowd below the arena burst into cheers. The current Li Hao's appearance appeared very dashing and handsome. Nice attack, it's the Wind Jade Tree Fist. Some of the people recognized the move and cheered. However, the distant two maidens' expressions were both filled with contempt and ridicule. Long Chen similarly also sneered. This kind of idiot move filled with mistakes could still be used against enemies. The fist was smashing towards him and a strong wind whistled as it approached, but Long Chen seemed to not notice it at all and didn't move even an inch. This trash doesn't even know how to dodge, sneered some people under the stage. However, just when this ridicule had just been shouted out, Li Hao's fist came to a complete stop just 3 centimeters away from Long Chen's face. The originally ridiculing people suddenly came to a complete silence. They noticed that one of Long Chen's legs had struck out and violently kicked Li Hao in the area between his legs. The originally beaming with happiness and elegant Li Hao now had an expression like a purple eggplant. Long Chen's kick clearly caused him an extremely severe pain, making his facial features warp and preventing him from moving. However, he might not be able to move from the pain, but Long Chen could. In just this brief pause, Long Chen grabbed Li Hao's hair, forcefully pulling on it while also strongly kicking out with his knee. Slam, slam, slam. Long Chen completed his actions in an extremely refreshing manner, and in a short time his strong and fast rhythmic actions gave people a very intense show. The unpleasant sound of bones breaking came out from Li Hao's body. His nose was already caved in, his whole face was covered in blood, and he himself had already lost consciousness. For a moment, not even one voice could be heard from the crowd. Nobody had expected that a strong person at the third heaven stage of chi condensation would be beaten by a trash who had no cultivation base, and in such a quick manner. Moreover, he had done it in the most clean and efficient manner. This kind of result was a firm slap in the face towards the crowd that had been ridiculing him. Even the distant two observing maidens were completely shocked. Although Li Hao was nothing to them and he could easily be killed with a wave of their hands. But Long Chen was not the same as them. From the very start, not a trace of spiritual energy had been used by Long Chen, and he had completely relied on an ordinary person's abilities to defeat Li Hao. Long Chen wins. A voice came from below the stage from an elderly man who was often in charge of the martial arena and its registration. Long Chen's stomach fluctuated rapidly a couple times, and it was only with great willpower that he managed to stop and suppress the killing intent inside him. Right now was not the time for killing people. But he had been oppressed for such a long time, and now that he had exploded out, it was hard for him to withdraw it. But as the rest of the world saw it though, Long Chen's actions appeared to be from lack of strength, like he was gasping for breath. Long Chen walked off the stage to the elderly man and received the sword he had used as his stakes, as well as a crystal card with 5,000 gold coins on it. The rules here were that before the match they had to hand in the stakes to the referee in order to show it was equitable, and also lowering the chance of anyone backing out during the battle. After receiving the martial sword, Long Chen directly returned it to Shifeng, and placing the crystal card into his robes, he couldn't help but to become somewhat excited. Although 5,000 gold coins wasn't very much, it could help settle a bit of the desperate situation his family was in. It had been very long since they had received a stipend from the empire, and nowadays the Long family was quickly reaching the point where they couldn't even afford food. Under the attentive gazes of countless people, the two of them unhurriedly left. The two maidens watched Long Chen leave, and immediately afterwards they also disappeared. The news that Long Chen had beat Li Hao seemed to gain legs as it rapidly spread. In just a short time the entire imperial capital learned of it. The news puzzled countless people. How could a trash who couldn't practice martial arts possibly become this difficult to deal with? But even with so many people personally seeing it, as well as the news that Li Hao had to be carried back to his estate, quite a few people were still incapable of completely accepting it. Long Chen had wanted to split his earnings with Shifeng, but Shifeng was completely unwilling, and in the end he quickly made an excuse that he had things to do before hastily leaving, not even asking Long Chen how he had suddenly become so powerful. Remembering this favor in his heart, Long Chen directly went to the 100 Herb Market. Entering into the 100 Herb Market, Long Chen requested a catalog of their medicinal ingredients. On it were very clear recordings of the various medicinal ingredients' names and prices. Long Chen saw the majority of the medicinal ingredients required to refine the Feng Fu pill. It was quite lucky that the medicinal ingredients for the Feng Fu pill were not especially uncommon. However, looking at the price, Long Chen's heart practically dripped blood. The gold coins he had were only enough to buy 3 portions of the medicinal ingredients. But he couldn't spend it all on these medicinal ingredients, since he still needed to buy a medicinal cauldron for refining, as well as to buy some other spare medicinal ingredients. The few gold coins he had were like a cup of water trying to put out a burning cart. But not buying it was also unacceptable, so Long Chen clenched his teeth and spent 1,200 gold coins to buy a bronze cauldron furnace of the worst quality. He also bought 1 set of the medicinal ingredients for the Feng Fu pill, as well as a large amount of medicinal ingredients for the Qi recovery powder. By the time Long Chen left the 100 Herb Market, the amount on his crystal card was only 500 gold coins. After returning home, Long Chen went right to own room. Firmly locking the door, he ordered Bauer to tell everyone that he must not be disturbed. He knew that his mother would hear the news that he had once again went to compete in martial arts, and afraid that his mother would worry, he purposely told Bauer to block her. In any case, nothing had happened to him and his mother shouldn't become too concerned. Right now he had to seize every second of every minute to quickly increase his strength. He was sure that the current Long family's predicament was not as simple as what it appeared to be, and Long Chen sensed the coming of a crisis. The spiritual energy in Long Chen's body started moving, and a cluster of flame appeared within his hand. This was a pill cultivator's agglomerated pill flame. But when Long Chen saw this ball of flame, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This flame was far too weak. The pill flame was formed from a pill cultivator's spiritual energy, and through special operating methods it was condensed into a spiritual energy flame. However, the current Long Chen's pill flame's temperature was extremely low, and even compared to ordinary pill flames, it was much weaker. In addition, Long Chen found that without his dantian to support him, he couldn't maintain the pill flame for more than a quarter hour, which was far from enough time to refine medicinal pills. Long Chen bitterly smiled. However, luckily he had his backup plan, which was first refining the energy recovery powder. Placing the medicinal ingredients into the cauldron, he refined them one by one. However, he didn't use his pill flame, but instead used a normal fire from wood. When all the medicinal ingredients had been refined, he placed them into a jug of water to form energy recovery liquid, and after resting for a short period of time, Long Chen took a deep breath and prepared himself to officially begin refining the Feng Fu pills. Chapter 4. Condensing the Feng Fu Star. 9 Yin Grass, refinement complete. Earth Dragon Root, refinement complete. Flame Seed, refinement complete. Over 30 types of medicinal herbs were refined one by one, using up over 2 hours of Long Chen's time and causing to be covered in sweat. Refining pills was not the same as simply decocting medicine. Every single medicinal herb's essence had to be extracted while at the same time removing the impurities, forming a powder. However, the flame in Long Chen's hand was of far too low a quality and the refined powder still retained many impurities to be ideal. Still, this was the only method that he had. First of all, Long Chen's cultivation base was insufficient, and thus he didn't have the necessary strength to sustain the pill flame, making its strength weak. Second of all, currently Long Chen didn't have the opportunity or capability to subdue a different flame, so he could only settle for what he had. But wanting to train in alchemy methods required not only a strong pill flame, but also required a forceful spiritual energy, and the most important requirement was an exceedingly powerful spiritual strength. The other two requirements were not that difficult. As for the pill flame, as long as you obtained all the proper preparations, you could seize a flame-type magical beast and gradually tame it into a house pet. Drawing on the magical beast's flame, you could cultivate your own flame to match its formidable power. Over 99% of capable alchemists used beast flames. Only a couple people who possessed extremely ancient inheritances of powerful strength could control an extremely mysterious and mystical spirit flame found within heaven and earth. Spirit flames were flames that possessed their own soul, and according to Long Chen's memories, he had previously controlled an extremely formidable heaven and earth spirit flame. But no matter how formidable it was in the past, right now he could only use this trash flame for his pill refining. After all, the things in his memories were not things he could take out. After resting enough, Long Chen took a deep breath. He placed a candle into his hand and a yellow flame appeared. Not bad, after going through the refinements, the flame's strength has increased by a slight amount. Whatever, it's better than nothing, I guess. After consecutively refining 7 different medicines' essence, he threw them into the furnace. His spiritual strength erupted out and the flame in Long Chen's hand suddenly fluctuated, and compared to before, it was now several times stronger. Using spiritual strength to support the flame, if other alchemists saw this, wouldn't they get shocked to death? Long Chen bitterly smiled. Spiritual strength was the foundation of any pill refinement. At the time of refining, a large amount of spiritual strength was needed in order to control the temperature. If even a slight deviation occurred, it would waste all your previous efforts and you would end up refining a pile of pill ashes. And if the medicinal pill had a very large medicinal strength, then you might even cause a furnace explosion. Most alchemists wouldn't start using their spiritual strength right at the beginning of the refinement. They would only use it towards the latter stages when the pill was about to take form in order to very carefully control the flame's strength. After all, that was the critical time in the formation of the pill. At that time the flame's temperature had to constantly change, sometimes high and sometimes low, and doing so required a large consumption of spiritual strength. If at that time the alchemist's spiritual strength was already exhausted, then the furnace of pills could basically be considered as scrapped. However, Long Chen actually started using his spiritual strength right at the beginning of the refinement. And in addition, he used this precious spiritual strength just in order to increase the flame, treating it like firewood. Any alchemist would definitely rage and curse at him for doing so. Even if someone was a reckless and frivolous spender, no one would actually spend it like this. But Long Chen wasn't worried. According to his memories, his spiritual strength was already not lacking compared to ordinary alchemists. Pill cultivator ranks were Pill Apprentice, Pill Adept, Pill Master, Pill King, Pill Emperor, Pill Ancestor, Pill Venerate, Pill Saint, and Pill God. The Fengfu pill was a first-tier medicinal pill, and generally only pill cultivators who had reached the Pill Apprentice stage could refine a first-tier medicinal pill. Long Chen's current memories also included those of a pill god, so he was completely clear on his current capabilities. When Long Chen had awoken, his spiritual strength had changed to become abnormally strong compared to his previous trash self. Therefore, Long Chen was qualified to use his spiritual strength in such a manner. The pill furnace in front of Long Chen faintly trembled, emitting a slight buzzing noise. By increasing the power of the flame, the speed has increased by quite a bit. He hastily threw in 3 more medicinal ingredients into the furnace. However, at this moment Long Chen's forehead was already perspiring. Hurriedly taking out a straw, he placed one end into the medicine jar, which was filled with energy recovery liquid, and quickly drank a mouthful. When the energy recovery liquid entered his stomach, the pores all over his body opened and began to crazily absorb the spiritual energy between heaven and earth. His originally about to be exhausted spiritual energy rapidly recovered. This was something that Long Chen had prepared earlier. Without it, there was no way for him to refine the Fengfu pill. With the current HIMS level, it would be a joke if he could actually refine a pill on his own without some kind of assistance. With the straw in his mouth, every now and then he would draw in another mouthful of energy recovery liquid to replenish his body's spiritual energy. With Long Chen's spiritual energy being replenished, his spiritual strength could show off how extremely powerful it was, and it was only 2 days later that Long Chen started to feel a bit exhausted. That was a sign that his spiritual strength had been largely used up. But at this time medicinal ingredients had already been absorbed into the medicinal cauldron, so all that was left was finishing it up. The medicinal aroma was also starting to fill the air. Although Long Chen's impression of a first-tier medicinal pill was that it was so easy to refine it could be done with his eyes closed, the current him was no longer the same pill god in his memories. His destiny had already been completely changed, and saying that he wasn't nervous would be a lie. Buzz. Suddenly the pill furnace's interior started to pulse, emitting a burst of buzzing noises. The energy within the pill furnace also started to bika, berserk. Long Chen didn't become even the slightest bit panicked, and on the contrary he even started to smile. This was the indication of the pill's formation, and also the most critical time of the refinement. His spiritual strength completely activated with not even a trace held in reserve. The flame in his hands suddenly exploded out, and an incorporeal strength tightly sealed the entire pill furnace. This technique was called Heaven Seal Earth Lock, and was something that he had come up with from his memories. It was something used in order to prevent pill explosions and thus furnace explosions. Moreover, this technique was very practical, and could in the shortest period seal the medicinal energy within the pill furnace, not letting too much leak out. Normal alchemists would all do this at the last step, because when the medicinal pill would go berserk, it was possible to stabilize it by taking a more gentle action. Although doing so would decrease the danger by a lot, but a large amount of the medicinal essence would be lost, and therefore the medicinal pill's quality would just be ordinary. Bang! Following the full suppression of Long Chen's spiritual strength, the pill furnace emitted a smothered noise, and following it everything turned silence. The pill furnace had already turned tranquil. Long Chen couldn't help but to gasp for breath. His whole body was drenched in sweat, and he was so dizzy that he felt the sky was spinning. When he felt a bit better, he excitedly opened up the furnace. His hand was even trembling as he picked out 5 extremely round pills. Holding them in his hand, a dense medicinal aroma completely filled the whole room. 2 low-grade pills, 3 trash pills. Saying it out loud really makes me lose enough face to die. Long Chen's face was showing how excited he was, but he still sighed. Staring blankly for a bit, he couldn't help but to laugh. He had a mixture of a lifetime's worth of memories from a pill god along with his memories of the current him. Apparently that pill god was truly excessively arrogant. He himself didn't care about losing any face though, and he carefully examined the pills in his hand. There were low-grade medicinal pills with their bodies completely round and their pill aroma filling the air which refreshed the mind and raised a person's spirit when they smelled it. Long Chen couldn't hold back a burst of elation. After all, one successful medicinal pill could be sold in the imperial capital for at least 10,000 gold coins. In addition, even the 3 trash pills in his hand were much better than the medicinal ball his mother had bought for him, especially since at least 30% of the medicinal essence had been sealed into the pill. A medicinal essence that took up 50% of the pill would be termed low grade, and over 80% of all medicinal pills were only low grade. If the medicinal essence reached 60%, it would be middle grade, 70% would make it high grade, 80% would make it top grade, 90% would make it peerless grade, and as for 100%, hee. Right now Long Chen didn't think too much about it as it was simply too far for the current him. Some people might wonder what the difference was between 50 and 60% medicinal essence. Was it a significant difference? Wouldn't consuming 2 low-grade medicinal pills be much more effective than 1 middle grade? If someone heard you ask this, they'd probably choke on their own saliva. Inside a medicinal pill was not only its medicinal essence, but also impurities. These impurities were unable to be absorbed by the body, and most importantly these impurities would cancel out a portion of the absorbed essence. The saying that each medicine had its own side effects was not just a colloquial saying, but a hard truth. During the formation of a pill, it was difficult to avoid accumulating pill toxins. These kinds of toxins, if not taken very often, would not have a large effect. But for cultivators, medicinal pills were often life-saving measurements, and in one lifetime who would know just how many pills you would consume. When the body's pill toxins reached a certain degree, it would become a life-threatening poison. Pill toxins were one of the most difficult to eliminate poisons. They penetrated deep into the flesh and bones, and even the spirit. But the higher grade a medicinal pill was, the fewer toxins it would have. It was for this reason that the medicinal effect of a middle-grade medicinal pill was over 10 times greater than a low-grade medicinal pill, and as for the price difference, it was at least 100 times greater. Collecting the 5 medicinal pills and cleaning up the medicinal furnace, Long Chen could no longer endure and collapsed into slumber. After sleeping for an unknown amount of time, he felt 2 hands caressing his cheek and could hear some low murmurings, but he was too exhausted and incapable of waking up. When Long Chen once again regained consciousness, it was already 3 days later. His stomach was growling with hunger and he wolfed down his food before once again starting his seclusion. Consuming 1 trash pill, he used his spiritual strength to guide the medicinal pill's energy to enter the Yongquan point on the bottom of his foot. That was the location of the first star of the 9-star hegemon body art, the position of the condensed Fengfu starch. Bang! Long Chen's right foot shook. An intense energy came from the bottom on his foot and the ground under it became covered in cracks. Excellent, I've already found the meridian channel as well as the exact position. Now I can genuinely attack it. Long Chen faintly smiled, and he took out a low-tier Fengfu pill and directly consumed it. A pure and perfect energy erupted, and under the Long Chen's pull, it went straight to the Yongquan point on the bottom of his foot. The Yongquan point trembled. Following the rushing medicinal energy, it was just like a dry riverbed receiving water, and it crazily convulsed. Boom! A booming noise reverberated and the frightening energy filled Long Chen's whole body. A tyrannical energy exploded out of its own accord, shaking the room into smoke and dust, with waves of energy surging about. As the smoke and dust slowly scattered, it exposed a tranquil and refined Long Chen, his eyes filled with excitement. He could sense a bean-sized body on the bottom of his foot from which endless energy would flow out of into his body, giving Long Chen a feeling of wanting to lift his head up to the heavens and roar. The activity from Long Chen's room caused the entire noble estate to be disturbed, and one after another everyone rushed over. Seeing his mother also coming over, Long Chen hastily said, "Mom, today is the day that the noble heirs can enter the Imperial College Palace to study. I have to hurry over." Saying this, he left behind a group of dumbstruck people and a pile of destroyed ruins as he changed into clean clothes and left directly for the Imperial College Palace. Chapter 5. Imperial College. The Imperial College opened its doors one day every month for the imperial capital's noble heirs. In the morning they would practice poetry and etiquette, and in the afternoon the palace's martial arts depository would be available to everyone free of charge. The previous openings of the Imperial College had had absolutely no meaning to Long Chen, since even if he attended he would just be the object of ridicule for everyone there. But now that was no longer the case. After consuming the Feng Fu pill, Long Chen had already condensed an embryonic form of the Feng Fu star. Although it was just an embryonic form and couldn't store that much spiritual energy, it was still able to store much more than could be stored in just a body's meridians. After all, the meridians were like rivers, while the dantian was like the ocean that fed the rivers, even sometimes being called the energy siege. Although a river might appear large, but its capacity was limited. Without the dantian to support it, it would quickly all be used up. But this problem was completely resolved with the condensing of the Feng Fu star. And the most important thing was that with the embryonic form of the Feng Fu star being formed, as long as there was enough energy, it would eventually become a complete Feng Fu star. At that time, Long Chen would have something unique to himself to use as a dantian. This was the most unique point to the 9-star hegemon body art. When all 9 stars were opened, it would be equivalent to having 9 dantians. Anyone could understand just how powerful this kind of forceful spiritual energy source was. Moreover, Long Chen was in possession of the entire 9-star hegemon body art. Unfortunately, such a cultivation technique was something that defied the heavens, and his understanding was still very low, so he still needed to spend an endless amount of meditation on it. Once he managed to completely condense his Feng Fu star, he would be able to store an extremely large amount of spiritual energy. Then he could attempt to agglomerate his blood vessels and enter the blood condensation stage, thus becoming a true martial artist. The Qi condensation stage was just the first step of training in martial arts. Only by stepping into the blood condensation stage, having your blood and Qi surge, and having your martial powers sharply rise, only then could you be considered a genuine martial artist. Long Chen didn't know what heaven stage of Qi condensation he would count as, but with the formation of his embryonic Feng Fu star, his body's strength had been increased by a surprising amount. The current him could let out a very simple punch and it would cause the wind to whistle, so much so that the force it generated would have enough power to break apart a vase even 2 meters away. Essentially, it was like his whole body was brimming with strength. His goal by going to the Imperial College this time was to enter the martial arts depository. With his Feng Fu star about to be completely condensed, his body's spiritual energy had gradually risen and he could already begin to train in martial battle skills. These so-called martial battle skills were all created from extremely powerful seniors. They were powerful fighting techniques that used a person's spiritual energy, Qi, and meridians. Battle skills were extremely terrifying. It could allow a martial artist to release an extremely formidable power that was several times stronger than a person's ordinary strength. It was impossible to be brave in front of them. Therefore, each battle skill was extremely important to a martial artist. Now that Long Chen had a spiritual energy capable of training in battle skills, he was itching to obtain one. The Imperial College was located to the north side of the imperial capital. It spanned tens of kilometers, and other than the Imperial Palace, it was the most grand and imposing building in the entire imperial capital. After Long Chen showed off his identification plate, he entered into the Imperial College and went straight to the literature hall. That was where the morning cultivation took place and where the cultivators would listen to the studies of Tao from lecturers talking about everything and anything, from etiquette to poetry, and even to ancient theories of literature. Entering into the literature hall, he saw that due to how early he was, The extremely large literature hall only had a couple dozen people. "Ha, Brother Chen, you came?" Just as Long Chen entered, a couple youths came over and cordially greeted him. These youths were similar to Long Chen. For various reasons they also had no way of cultivating, and although they couldn't be considered best friends, they were still fellow sufferers who empathized with each other. In the golden age of martial arts in the Phoenix Cry Empire, these youths might not have bullied in such a miserable way like Long Chen, but they were also frequently sneered at and suffered from a cold and indifferent treatment. Thus these people who suffered from similar torments ended up becoming closer to Long Chen. They were especially glad to see him now since it had been a long time since they'd seen each other. "Huh, you guys came here pretty early," Long Chen laughingly greeted. With the success of the condensation of his Feng Fu star, his mood had improved greatly from the formerly depressed him. "I heard a couple days ago that Brother Long put up a huge display of his awesome power, defeating Li Hao. You really make us admire you. Don't tell me that Brother Long can actually genuinely cultivate now?" One skinny teen extremely enviously asked. Originally they were all the same level as Long Chen. Hearing that Long Chen could actually defeat Li Hao, who was at the third heaven stage of qi condensation, they were all extremely shocked while also feeling a slight jealousy. It was just luck. But most recently I did learn a new divine technique." Long Chen didn't want to continue on this subject, so he brought up a new mysterious topic. "Divine technique? What's that?" Sure enough, everyone immediately became distracted and changed the subject. This little brother recently obtained a rare clairvoyance book, and after painstakingly reading this book I learned quite a few things. Long Chen somewhat complacently said, "Clairvoyance technique? Isn't that just what the fortune tellers on the streets use to scam people?" "Not quite. With what I learned from that clairvoyance technique, I saw that Li Hao's face had a dark omen of misfortune on it, and it was only then that I decided to duel with him. And as for the result, Long Chen laughed and stopped there. Everyone momentarily was dubious for a moment when someone suddenly brightened with understanding and said, "It seems to be true. I heard that Li Hao seemed to have been bewitched that day, and his whole body didn't have even the slightest bit of battle energy before he was defeated by Brother Long." The details of Long Chen and Li Hao's battle were known to everyone, but there were many people who felt that Li Hao's defeat was quite a deep mystery. Nowadays there was a great deal of discussion over Long Chen. "Brother Long, since you are proficient in reading faces, can you help take a look at me and tell me why my fiancée always avoids me? Why won't she agree to see me?" One person somewhat vexingly asked. "No problem. Come, let's first find a place for us all to sit. Standing here is somewhat unsuitable." Their group found a table in the corner to sit at, and the table even had some refreshments for them. Long Chen pointed towards the table's desserts and laughingly told everyone, "Let's all eat a piece." Okay, the other people didn't stand on courtesy and all took a piece. Everyone seemed a bit confused as they looked at Long Chen. "How's the taste?" "Very good. Let's eat another piece." "Okay." That person once again picked up a piece and ate a bite. But when he had only eaten one bite, his face suddenly brightened and he respectfully turned towards Long Chen and said, "Many thanks for Brother Long's advice. This little brother understands now. I was being too greedy and Brother Long was reminding me that people need to be content with their situation, right?" Everyone admiringly looked at Long Chen. Who would have thought that Long Chen had the profound skills in order to use some small desserts as food for thought? However, Long Chen still sighed and shook his head. "Wrong. What I wanted to remind you of is that you're already this fat, and yet you're still eating this much. Soon you won't even be able to fit through the door. The fact that your fiancé is still with you and hasn't left you is already an enormous accommodation. You should be happy with just that. With a body shape like yours, any woman would be scared to sleep beside you. What if you roll over in your sleep? You'd crush her so hard she'd turn into a painting." That person's face reddened, and with Long Chen's reminder he looked at his 5-foot-tall height with his 4.5-foot-wide stomach. Apparently he had previously felt that he had only fattened by a little bit. "Fatty you, don't waste Brother Long's precious time. Hurry up and go lose some weight." Elder Brother Long, how about you take a shot at reading my face? A different slender youth respectfully asked with a smile. Oh, you? Long Chen made a big show of acting very seriously as he looked at him for quite a while before saying, your face ordains that before you are 30 you will be destitute and frustrated, but the good thing is that after you are 30. That person became jubilant saying, is it possible that after 30 I can suddenly rise in my cultivation? No. After you are 30 you will slowly become accustomed to your situation and no longer be frustrated, said Long Chen. Everyone couldn't help but to burst into laughter, but just as they were laughing they suddenly saw two bitter eyes staring at them, making everyone's laughter break off. Long Chen had long since noticed that person. Turning around, they all saw Li Hao glaring arrows at them. Senior Li Hao, are your wounds better now? Congratulations! Your outer wounds are all healed, but what about your inner wounds? Long Chen asked, seeming deeply concerned. Li Hao's face twitched. That day his face had been smashed flat by Long Chen and he had needed to be carried home. The Li family hurriedly asked for the help of an alchemist from the Alchemist Guild and had to pay an extremely large sum of gold coins to let Li Hao recover. Having money was truly good. In such a short time, Li Hao had already returned to a point where he looked the same as a normal person. But after Long Chen brought the subject back up, Li Hao's groin started to hurt as if he was remembering that one kick from Long Chen. At that time, Long Chen's kick had been very vicious, just a little bit off from turning him into a cripple. The thing that pissed him off the most though was that only after he got carried home and healed did he notice that he was missing a certain something. When his estate noticed this they hurriedly rushed back to the martial arena, but by that time they found that the arena had already been cleaned, and it was reported that something had been taken away by a wild dog. When Li Hao had woken up and heard this news, he almost died from his anger. But now there was no way to fix it, and no matter how amazing an alchemist was, there was no way for them to fix what he had lost. What had been two was now only one. Although the loss of one family jewel wouldn't tilt him while walking, the loss of the originally symmetric pair was hard on him. And now that Long Chen had brought it back up, his face became exceedingly ugly. He unwaveringly glared at Long Chen, his teeth grinding in fury. Long Chen, you son of a bitch! I challenge you to a life-or-death duel. Do you dare accept? Long Chen's originally amused expression immediately tensed. Being called in such a way was exceedingly insulting, especially since it also insulted his mother. It really was the case of not knowing the value of one's life. Fine, if you want to be free from the mortal world's worries, then I'll help you. Same thing as before, I want to add stakes. Long Chen stared back at Li Hao. Since you want to die you had best offer me up some benefits. Although they came from the same nation, he didn't care about Li Hao and his death would be trifling to him. Fine, no matter how high you make the stakes, Li Hao, will accept. Sneering in his mind, he thought to himself that no matter how high the stakes were, once Long Chen was dead there was no way he could spend it. Li Hao was under the impression that last time he had simply been careless and Long Chen had grabbed onto that opening and thus he had lost. Now he would definitely not make the same mistake, so this fight would definitely not go the same way as the last fight. In addition, this time was different in that he had declared a life-or-death duel, while in last time's duel, although you would not be held responsible for killing your opponent with a blow, as long as the opponent conceded it was not allowed to continue attacking them. But in the life-or-death duel, once the two people went onto the stage it was equivalent to putting their lives on the line. Even if someone admit defeat it would be useless. The victor could do as he pleased, so the loser's life would be in their hands. Okay, tomorrow, 3/4 after noon, we will meet on the life and death stage. Li Hao coldly laughed, and when he looked at Long Chen it was like he was staring at a dead person. Long Chen coldly sneered inside. Now was the time for him to kill the chicken to warn the monkeys, and seeing Li Hao leave he slyly laughed. Careful to stay balanced while walking, don't trip. Hearing Long Chen's words, the Li Hao who had already turned to leave stiffened and his face became contorted as he inferred the hidden meaning behind Long Chen's words. Taking a deep breath, he acted like he hadn't heard anything as he slowly walked to a different part of the literature hall. But Long Chen's words seemed to be like a steel needle piercing through his sensitive parts, and every time he lifted his leg, it would trigger memories of that bone-chilling attack. He continued to act as if nothing had happened, but the more he tried to do so, the more unnatural his gait became, which caused everyone to stare strangely over at him. In the end, Li Hao waddled away similarly to a duck. One person turned to Long Chen and reminded him to be careful. "Brother Long, why did you accept his challenge? This is a life-or-death battle you're going into. It's going to result in someone's death." "No problem. Today I read his face and saw a dark aura of death around him. With it twisting around him, it's basically like a ghost sealing his life. He's doomed to die within 2 days." "That's right, I now have something that I need a couple people's help for," whispered Long Chen. Everyone exchanged glances, and in the end the person who had been nicknamed Fatty Yu clenched his teeth. "Brother Long, since you've asked, I'll give you my entire savings." Saying this, he handed over a crystal card to Long Chen. Long Chen hadn't expected that this Fatty Yu would actually have such a strong spirit of brotherhood with him. His crystal card had over 80,000 gold coins on it. Although they were all noble heirs, mostly they were born in far-off branches, so they weren't considered very important. These gold coins should be an extremely large sum to Fatty Yu. "Fine, I have 60,000 here, take it?" "I don't have that much here, only 30,000. Brother Long, I only have this little capability." "I have." Originally Long Chen had thought that just borrowing 10 or so thousand gold coins would already be quite a lot. He didn't expect that they would actually completely empty their pockets to help him. "Everyone, if by chance I were to die, then your money would basically be lost." Long Chen looked at the crystal cards in his hand and he couldn't help but to give everyone a reminder. Does Brother Long look down on us? None of are capable of cultivating, and every day we have to suffer through other people's torments. Brother Long, the fact that you dare go all out in a battle against one of them means you have courage that none of us possess, but helping you out this little bit is still something we can do. When these people saw Long Chen agree to the life and death battle, they couldn't help but to become excited since they were fighting a common enemy. Seeing Long Chen begging for help, they became even more heated, and in the end they didn't even care about the consequences. Long Chen nodded. He recorded this feeling in his heart as he held the 200-and-something thousand gold coins in his hand. At this moment, a group of people walked into the literature hall, and the originally noisy literature hall immediately turned completely silent. Chapter 6. Collecting Interest. Long Chen turned to look at the people entering and his eyes turned cold. This group of people were hovering around one certain fellow, similar to how the stars flocked around the moon, groveling. He seemed to be carved out of jade and appeared extremely handsome. He was none other than the person who had beaten Long Chen on the martial arena to the point where he had almost died, Man Huang Ho's son, Zhou Yaoyang. Zhou Yaoyang was the noble heir of Man Huang Ho, and his cultivation base was at the peak amongst his peers. Therefore his popularity was very high amongst his fellow noble heirs. Zhou Yaoyang immediately noticed Long Chen's group, and smiling slightly, he walked over. Looking at Long Chen, he said, "Many apologies for what happened last time. I didn't expect that my one blow would cause you to not even be able to recognize your own mother." Although his mouth spoke words of regret, his face didn't have even the slightest trace of apology. His words were filled with disdain, just like he was a king far above others looking down on Long Chen. "Don't worry about it. Very soon I'll beat you to the point where you don't even recognize your own grandmother." Long Chen indifferently smiled, but inside he was secretly furious. When he had awoken that day, only his mother and that old alchemist had been there. Therefore this news must have been transmitted by that old stick. Zhou Yaoyang's one sentence was equivalent to him telling Long Chen that that old man had been one of his people. And furthermore, Long Chen's injury that day might have been extremely frightening, but in reality it wasn't actually a life-threatening injury. Even the injury on the back of his head had only appeared bad due to the amount of blood, but it was not actually too severe. Therefore there had basically been no point in using an expensive medicinal pill in order to treat it. The old man had clearly been trying to frighten his mother and make sure that he could suck up all of his mother's savings. Something like that basically had no benefit for himself, but instead weakened the Long family's resources. With their current living situation, it was like adding hail onto snow. To think there was actually such a hidden plot behind his back. Long Chen, are you looking to die? I think that you seem to have forgotten the pain now that your wounds have healed. Don't tell me you want to once again be beaten half to death by Brother Yaoyang? That's right, a trash who's incapable of cultivating actually dares to open his mouth viciously. Obviously he's looking to die. What an idiot! Letting such an idiot count as a noble heir like us is just an insult to us. Zhou Yaoyang didn't even need to speak before the people beside him began cursing Long Chen, their saliva spraying wildly. Long Chen, you might be a noble heir like me, but one of us is in the heavens while one of us is on the ground. You are just a small ant, and all you can do is stare up at me. Therefore, even if I am bullying you, all you can do is suffer in silence. Otherwise the consequences will be just like last time, and you will end up being beaten into a dead dog, said Zhou Yaoyang, lifting his finger to point at Long Chen's nose. Pow! Long Chen indifferent smiled, and suddenly he extended his hand, and before anyone reacted he tightly clenched onto Zhou Yaoyang's extended finger, and using a slight amount of force, a snapping noise rang out. Zhou Yaoyang emitted a miserable cry as the pain of his snapped finger shook his whole body. His 10-finger one-heart technique was actually so easily broken and snapped by Long Chen. Even though he was a strong person at the 7th heaven stage of qi condensation, as long as a person hadn't stepped into the blood condensation stage, they would only be slightly stronger than ordinary people. In addition, he had been taken by surprise, so he hadn't had time to defend himself, meaning he was basically no different than an ordinary person. Long Chen condescendingly looked down on Zhou Yaoyang, whose face was contorted in pain, and with a questioningly tone he asked, "You think you're above others? Others are nothing to you? Are you sure you're not talking about yourself?" The sudden, unexpected turn of events shocked everyone, and Zhou Yaoyang was in such pain that he was unable to reply. Only then did the others react and throw themselves at Long Chen. "Bastard, hurry up and release Brother Yaoyang. Whoever dares come over will be beat to death by me." When the others following Zhou Yaoyang saw that Long Chen had dared attack him, they all shouted and swarmed around him. Just as they were about to reach him, a large figure suddenly appeared beside Long Chen and furiously bellowed at the others with a roar that was like thunder, shaking their eardrums. Long Chen smiled when he saw that it was. Who else could it be but Shifeng? The noble heirs who were about to charge forward all stopped when they saw it was Shifeng. Shifeng was someone who was proud and aloof, and he didn't like being pulled into any certain social group. However, his cultivation base was top tier amongst the noble heirs, and adding on his large and superior stature, he managed to intimidate everyone back. For a moment everyone descended into silence, and the only sound in the whole literature hall was the pained moans from Zhou Yaoyang. "What are you guys doing?" Suddenly an angry rebuke came over from the side and an old man walked over. Everyone's expression became much more timid and respectful when they saw this old man. This old man was one of the lecturers of the literature hall. He was a Confucian scholar, and it was known that he was an honest and strict person, a dignified man who spoke few words. Fighting within the literature hall is punishable by 1 month's custody. Do you guys want to try it out? The old man coldly snorted. Long Chen released Zhou Yaoyang's finger, which had already crushed and bent. Hurriedly turning towards the old man he smiled, "Teacher, you've misunderstood. Just now we weren't fighting, we were just doing a test." "Oh, the testum? What kind of test?" The old man obviously wasn't so easily hoodwinked, and he coldly questioned Long Chen. "We were testing how long the strength of 1 finger could hold out against the attack of 5 fingers. Through this test we reached the conclusion that the power of cooperation is something that cannot be stopped. No matter how strong a finger is, it is still isolated. Its power will weaken from time to time, and only by relying on a partner can power be released in a steady flow, making it stronger and enduring. This time's test allowed both Zhou Yaoyang and I to obtain an understanding of how to properly use power, and it will have an extremely large benefit towards our future cultivation. Brother Zhou, what do you think about these benefits, Long Chen summarized as he stared with a hidden meaning towards Zhou Yaoyang. Zhou Yaoyang was angered to the point of nearly passing out, but this grievance could only be swallowed by him, or if he denied it he would be sent into custody with Long Chen. Even a noble heir couldn't break the literature hall's rules. Yes, that's right. Zhou Yaoyang did his best to keep his voice calm, but the pain was causing even his voice to sound rough. The old man looked at Long Chen and a trace of ridicule flashed within his eyes, but in the end he still nodded and said, "Since it was like this old man won't blame the two of you. But remember, in the future you cannot make a ruckus in here." Everyone secretly sighed that Long Chen had good luck when they heard this. The old man clearly knew that Long Chen was just making up nonsense, but he still let them all go. "Hey, wait." Zhou Yaoyang bit his teeth, and using a voice that only the two of them could hear he called out to Long Chen. Long Chen's hand attack had been extremely vicious. Not only did it break his finger, but in addition he had used some kind of unknown method in order to turn the meridians within his finger into mush. Otherwise Zhou Yaoyang would not be in such intense pain and end up as such a sorry figure without the slightest strength to fight back. "Brother Zhou, feel free to come find me again to do some tests. Today is just a small payment on the interest I owe to this bastard. The worst is yet to come," but on the outside Long Chen just courteously smiled. Over 200 noble heirs calmly and quietly took their seats. The old man nodded his head in satisfaction and started lecturing. But his material was vague and incomprehensible to them, and basically all of it fell on deaf ears. It caused everyone to become drowsy, but no one actually dared to sleep. Although that old man didn't have the slightest cultivation base, but within the entire Imperial College he had the final say in everything. If anyone angered him they would immediately be kicked out and could just forget about any intentions they had of entering the martial arts depository in the afternoon. This can be compared to chicken's eggs. One has gone bad and one is still good. But if you want to eat the good egg, you have to eat the bad egg first. The old man continued to talk about all sorts of things: history, classical works, how to rule a flourishing nation, agricultural knowledge. Even Long Chen almost dozed off. However, people like Fatty Yu actually listened very attentively. They couldn't cultivate, so they had to rely on an education for the future, hopefully obtaining some work with the government. Under this slow torment, the time slowly passed until noon. After eating lunch, everyone swarmed towards the battle skill pavilion. Even the people who had no way of cultivating also followed. Within the battle skill pavilion were countless battle skills and cultivation techniques, and going through them might offer them a lucky encounter. The battle skill pavilion had 3 floors, but only the bottom level was open to all the noble heirs. Even though it was just 1 floor, there were still 17 bookshelves completely packed with all kinds of battle skills and cultivation techniques. It was a brilliant sight that dazzled people. "Big brother Yaoyang, I already have a life and death battle agreement with Long Chen. This time I'll definitely kill him to help take revenge for you," Li Hao respectfully said. Who knew when, but Li Hao had at some previous times stealthily ran over beside Zhou Yaoyang. At this point Zhou Yaoyang had already used his energy in order to suppress the pain in his finger, but the important thing was that the meridians had been fried and so he had to find an alchemist to help him treat it. "It's still not the right time to kill him, otherwise I would have killed him last time." Zhou Yaoyang shook his head. Suddenly he asked, "That's right, how did you end up getting beat by him last time?" Actually it was just me being careless, and Long Chen happened to catch that opportunity. The result really infuriated me, to think that a trash could actually beat me one time." Li Hao answered with endless regret. His one loss from that time had caused his reputation to plummet, and the people whispering and gossiping about him behind his back drove him crazy with anger. He believed that last time was simply a small moment of carelessness, and so this time he definitely had quite a bit of killing intent towards him. Long Chen cannot be permitted to die, at least not for now. Don't mess this up. Zhou Yaoyang worried that Li Hao hadn't understood, so he purposely repeated himself. "Then what should I do? Just let him off like this?" Li Hao somewhat unwillingly asked. Zhou Yaoyang looked at his twisted broken finger, and grinding his teeth in anger, he said, "Although you can't kill him, but if you wanted to take back a couple things on his body, that would be fine. When Li Hao heard this, his eyes brightened with excitement. Excellent. This time I'll take what he took from me. Oh, and I think I'll also take one his eyes too. Seeing the expression in his eyes really pisses me off. Zhou Yaoyang and Li Hao grinned, but they didn't notice that Long Chen, who was faking interest in the tomes, also smiled. However, his smile was much colder compared to theirs, like a leopard staring at two bleeding sheeps. From Long Chen's current position, he was perfectly placed so that he could use his spiritual energy to investigate what the two of them were talking about. Although he couldn't hear what they were saying clearly, but looking at their expressions, he could still infer most of it. Observing the two of them start acting like nothing had happened and begin browsing the ancient tomes on the bookshelf, Long Chen was also disinclined to go deal with them. Instead, he switched to looking for his actual objective. His memories from a pill god only contained the 9-star hegemon body art as well as information on refining pills. There were no battle skills, so he absolutely needed to obtain one today. Long Chen finally settled on a battle skill and was just about to reach out his hand to take it when suddenly a dark-faced fellow grabbed onto it before him. "I'm sorry, this book has taken my fancy." That person didn't even look at Long Chen, and acting like no one was beside him, he started browsing the tome. Long Chen frowned slightly. This was very obviously done on purpose, but Long Chen didn't take action and instead switched to a different bookcase. Just as he saw a palm battle skill and reached out to take it, the dark-faced fellow who had long since been waiting to the side once again grabbed it. "I'm sorry, this..." Pow! A ruthless slap on the face landed on that dark face, interrupting his words and sending him flying. Chapter 7. Training in Battle Skills. Pow! An extremely loud and resounding slapping rang out, ruthlessly interrupting that black-faced fellow's words. The powerful force sent him flying, and over 10 teeth tumbled across the floor. "I'm sorry, this tome has taken the fancy of this young master." Long Chen looked down at the dark-faced fellow with a face seemingly full of regret as he apologized with great flair. That slap was very resounding, and it rang out throughout the entire battle skill pavilion. Everyone who had been busy browsing the battle skills immediately put down the manuals in their hands and turned in shock. Who dares to be so presumptuous as to act violently within the battle skill pavilion? Suddenly a cold shout rang out, and a black-clothed man appeared from the inner part of the battle skill pavilion. His face was cold and strict as he looked at Long Chen and the dark-faced fellow. That man's blood chi surged just like a towering mountain, pressuring the others and making it difficult for them to breathe. Long Chen's eyes shrunk. A strong blood condensation stage cultivator. It was unexpected that this place would actually have a hidden blood condensation stage cultivator, but thinking about it some more, this place was an important part of the battle skill pavilion, and having a strong person keep guard would save them some worries. It was forbidden to practice martial arts within the battle skill pavilion. This was a rule that everybody knew, and breaking this rule meant you would be taken into custody. "Speak, what happened here?" The blood condensation cultivator angrily shouted. "If you want to know, then ask him." Long Chen didn't have the slightest amount of fear as he spread out his hands in innocence. The dark-faced fellow became indignant. It was obviously him who had suffered the blow, so why would he still need to ask him? Senior. Senior. At this moment the distant Zhou Yaoyang had hurriedly run over. He reported to the blood condensation cultivator, "Senior, it was like this." Wang Mang's face suddenly felt extremely itchy, so he gave himself a slap. "There really wasn't any force or battle. You can check for yourself." The dark-faced fellow who was called Wang Mang became bewildered. But just as he was about to say something, he saw the distant Li Hao doing his best to give him a meaningful glances, so he swallowed his words back down. "You're Man Huang Ho's son." "Yes." Zhou Yaoyang hurriedly nodded. That person nodded his head, and looking at Wang Mang on the floor he said, "If your face is itchy then just scratch it, don't make such a fuss. Clean up after yourself. I don't want to see such a situation a second time." After speaking he turned and left, leaving a crowd of astonished people wondering why Zhou Yaoyang would actually help Long Chen. Haha, didn't you hear what he said? Hurry up and clean up your crap. Long Chen laughed as if he had totally expected this turn of events, and turning around, he walked away to continue looking for a battle skill. Hateful bastard. Looking at Long Chen, who downplayed this event, Wang Mang was angered to the point where his eyes practically spitting flames. That one slap of his caused him to feel extremely vexed. Wang Mang, endure it. If you were to open your mouth and accuse Long Chen of hitting you, then he would be taken into custody for 1 month, but after 1 month he would be released safe and sound. However, if you swallow this anger now, then tomorrow Li Hao will help you take back this face. Therefore you absolutely must endure. Zhou Yaoyang informed him. Wang Mang nodded his head. He knew that Li Hao had arranged a battle with Long Chen. But having bullied Long Chen for so long, he was already accustomed to it to the point where it was just playing around. But today his playing around caused him to receive a huge slap in the face, and he didn't even have a place to complain. The anger from the broken pieces of teeth could only be swallowed into his stomach. A couple of people were busily picking up the scattered teeth and wiping off the bloodstains when Zhou Yaoyang suddenly asked, "The swelling on your face is very minor, so it appears that Long Chen's strength is still not very high. But how is that he managed to knock out so many of your teeth?" The other people were also very suspicious. According to common sense, only an extremely powerful force could knock out such sturdy teeth. Who knows? It's completely ridiculous. Wang Mang gloomily said. What he didn't know was that Long Chen had used his knowledge as an alchemist to do so. Long Chen was already as familiar towards a human body's physiology as he was with the back of his hands. His slap had been struck in a skillful so that Wang Mang's gums would loosen and the teeth on that side of his face had taken the opportunity to tumble out. Long Chen's attack had been very vicious. Teeth were not something that could be easily regrown. They were not like other injuries that could be healed with medicines. In the future, Wang Mang could probably only use the other side of his face to eat. Having learned from Wang Mang's mistake, everyone became much more well-behaved and no one dared to once again provoke Long Chen. Long Chen was also happy to leisurely browse through these ancient tomes. The battle skills here could only be read in the pavilion and could not be taken outside. Spirit of the Bull. All battle skills could be divided into 3 categories: heaven, earth, and mortal. And as for all these battle skills and techniques here, all of them were merely the lowest level of the mortal category. Although they were the lowest level, these battle skills were still extremely precious existences. Even though they were for the high-status noble heirs, it still required a blood condensation cultivator to oversee it. From this one could see just how important battle skills were to the Phoenix Cry Empire. Although it's a low-grade battle skill, its usage of spiritual energy is clear and direct, making its effect pretty good. After completely reading through the battle skill in his hand, Long Chen nodded. This particular battle skill was very suited to him, especially since he was extremely familiar with the body's meridians, meaning he could master it very quickly. He carefully read through it once again. The current hymn's spiritual strength was extremely formidable compared to a normal person, and it was a great assistance towards his memory. Essentially, he was almost at the point where he could remember anything he saw. The Spirit of the Bull technique was completely memorized by him. Placing it back, he saw a different support battle skill, Chasing Wind Steps. Chasing Wind Steps was a kind of footwork technique. Spiritual energy would flow through a set of specific meridians focusing around the feet, increasing one's speed and explosiveness. Whether it was traversing large distances or short evasions, this technique was extremely effective. Excellent, another practical technique I can use. Long Chen faintly smiled, and once again busied himself to carefully remember all the routes of the spiritual energy and the details of how to do so. Time's up, all noble heirs must place back the tomes. If anyone dares to secretly steal some, even death is not harsh enough. At this moment the blood condensation cultivator once again appeared. His cold shout was transmitted to everyone's ears, and everyone hurriedly placed back the tomes in their hands. A couple people who still wanted to continue sighed and shook their heads. The Phoenix Cry Empire was truly exceedingly strict with battle skills. Every month they would only have half a day to study here. Many people had to spend several months' time just to learn a single battle skill. But although they were discontented, no one would dare to complain. Long Chen looked up slightly surprised. He hadn't expected that the time would pass by this quick. But if other people were to learn that Long Chen had used just a short 4 hours to completely memorize 2 battle skills, they might be shocked to the point their jaws would hit the ground. Within the recordings of a battle skill were extremely cryptic and difficult to understand portions, especially with regards to some of the terms about moving spiritual energy and qi around specific meridians. And what confounded people even more was attempting to practice moving their spiritual energy in such a complicated way while also reading. Leaving the Imperial College, Long Chen said his farewells to Fatty Yu and the others before going up to Shifeng and whispering a couple things. When Shifeng heard what Long Chen was saying, his whole face burst into shock, and although he quickly suppressed it back to his normal expression, he was unable to conceal the shock in his eyes. Returning home, Long Chen saw that the room where he had condensed the Feng Fu star had been cleaned up. However, at the moment it still wasn't safe for people to live in due to how heavily he had damaged it. Luckily, his family estate had many rooms and they had prepared a new one for him. First he went to his mother's room in order to assure her he was all right. Many things had consecutively come up during these days, causing Mrs. Long to become agitated and worried. Ever since Long Chen woke up, it seemed like he had changed and became a completely different person, causing her to feel a trace of unfamiliarity. However, the good thing was that Long Chen had already adjusted himself, and after accompanying and talking to his mother for a while, she calmed down by quite a bit, only he still didn't tell her about the life and death battle he had with Li Hao. Leaving his mother's side, Long Chen returned to his room. Locking his door, he directly swallowed the second Feng Fu pill. Following the absorption of the second Feng Fu pill, the Feng Fu star on the bottom of Long Chen's foot once again expanded a bit. Along with the expansion, the Feng Fu star's ability to store spiritual energy once again increased, just like a dantian. However, the current Feng Fu star was still in an embryonic form, and in order for it to take its complete form, countless number of Feng Fu pills were still required. That was also why Long Chen had been so dismayed when he had first acquired and learned the method to train in the 9-star hegemon body art. Currently, he had consumed 2 Feng Fu pills that were worth several 100,000 gold coins, and yet his Feng Fu star was still in its embryonic form. He was still extremely far off if he wanted it to reach the completely condensed star stage. Furthermore, it seemed there was a level beyond even that, which was something he still didn't know anything about. Just the Feng Fu star was basically a bottomless pit that required filling. But Long Chen knew that the 9-star hegemon body art was the only technique he could use. If not, he could only be mediocre his entire life. In fact, he wouldn't even match up to an ordinary person. Without using the 9-star hegemon body art, his only fate would be to sink down to become a weak person that would be constantly taken advantage of. It took him 4 hours to fully absorb this Feng Fu pill. His Feng Fu star's embryonic form had increased slightly in size, allowing him to control a greater amount of spiritual energy. By now it was already the middle of the night. Long Chen stealthily left his room and entered into Firewood Room. Taking a deep breath, he began to slowly train in the spirit of the bull. Long Chen was already extremely familiar with his meridians, so this low-grade battle skill was something he could master as soon as he started, and there was not even the slightest problem. He walked over to a stone grinder that weighed over half a ton and was normally used to crush up rice crops. Holding it with both hands, he lifted. Rise. The huge stone grinder rose into the air, and Long Chen's impression was that he still had some strength left over. Nowadays his strength should be enough to lift around 750 kilograms. However, his strength before when Zhou Yaoyang had beat him was only 75 kilograms. Compared to before, it was now increased dramatically by 10 times. Excellent, not including other factors. Just by relying on my current body strength, I can probably match up to people at the 5th heaven stage of qi condensation. Long Chen couldn't help but to feel somewhat excited, and at the same time he looked even more forward to training in the 9-star Gem body art. Right now he had only condensed an embryonic form and his power had raised by such an enormous amount. If he were to truly condense the complete Feng Fu star, then just what kind of level could his power rise to? Hesitating for a long while, finally Long Chen couldn't resist the urge to continue testing. Setting himself up, the air near his foot started to slowly fluctuate and a scorching power swept from his foot and through his meridians, slowly collecting into his fist. Fist of the Bull. Bang! Long Chen's fist smashed onto the stone grinder, and with an explosive bang the stone grinder was forced into the air and firmly slammed into the wall, causing the entire wall to break down. Long Chen couldn't help but to foolishly stare at the powerful force. Originally, he had just wanted to experiment a bit with the power. He hadn't expected it would cause such a huge disturbance. From outside the room, other people were all awoken and alarmed. Knowing that he had caused a huge disturbance, he quickly slipped back into his room and lied down to sleep. However, he was simply too excited to sleep, almost to the point of wanting to dance for joy. 9-star Gem body art. Just what level had this cultivation technique reached? If all 9 stars were condensed, then just what kind of power would be produced? Long Chen was simply too excited and ended up being unable to fall asleep the whole night. When first glimmer of the sun's rising lit up his room, he slowly opened his eyes. Want to take parts of my body? Quite a big dream. Too bad you're not able to reach it. After rising and washing his face, he heard that the servants were still discussing what had happened last night in the firewood room. Welcoming the rising sun, Long Chen couldn't stop a certain thought from emerging from his heart. Today's a good day. I feel like I can accomplish anything. Chapter 8, Life and Death Battle. Quite a few people had already assembled around the martial arena. Other than some idle people who regularly enjoyed watching, there were also a few of the imperial capital's noble heirs. Today was the day of Long Chen and Li Hao's life and death battle. Although this place would normally see a constant stream of duels and fights, life and death battles were still very few in number. What was even odder about this situation was that despite that the two noble heirs who were fighting didn't have shockingly high cultivation bases, countless people had still come to watch. In addition, gambler Yulan, the most famous gambler in the entire imperial capital, had also came to open up a public betting pool. Li Hao's victory, 2 times the odds. Long Chen's victory, 10 times the odds. Since no kinds of counterfeit could occur during a life and death battle, and adding their high statuses as noble heirs, betting on the outcome was extremely exciting to many people. Even some people who weren't gamblers also started to place bets, but for the most part everyone bet on Li Hao's victory. Although Long Chen did defeat Li Hao last time, at that time Li Hao was completely off guard and Long Chen had taken advantage of that opening. Such a miracle would not occur a second time. Only an extremely small portion of people who liked to either play around or were desperate decided to take a long shot and bet on Long Chen. The betting place was located not far from the martial arena, and the section to bet on Li Hao's victory was completely packed with people, whereas the section to bet on Long Chen was completely deserted. 300,000 gold coins on Long Chen. Suddenly a large and lofty man appeared and tossed a crystal card over to the person in charge of the betting. What? The handler was completely shocked by this amount. Throughout the entire morning he had only collected 10,000 gold coins till now. Hearing this new bet, he almost didn't believe his own ears. That huge figure was of course Shifeng. He had been entrusted by Long Chen to put all his gold coins onto his own victory. Because of his status, Long Chen knew that with gambler Yulan's power he would definitely open up a betting pool, and so he had already preemptively told Shifeng to bet on him. Even if gambler Yulan ended up in a deficit from opening up the betting pool, he would definitely end up losing his popularity and the trust in him if he backed out. Most of the money he normally earned was from his own personal bets, and as for these outer public bets, he didn't actually make much off of them. The main reason he had to hold public bets was to keep the people satisfied. And even if he were to take a loss, with gambler Yulan's imposing wealth, it could easily be brushed off. It was for these reasons that Long Chen decided to join the betting. Originally he had planned on having this money be bet with Li Hao, but now he could get 10 times the profit compared to if he bet with Li Hao. Long Chen wasn't an idiot, so of course he knew which was better. Yesterday, with the help of Fatty Yu and his friends, he had collected over 200,000 gold coins. When he had handed it over to Shifeng saw how assured he was acting, and clenching his teeth, he increased the amount to 300,000. Shifeng's family was not actually very rich, mostly since they had a tendency to be rather hot-tempered and were not that good at handling business. The families of Fatty Yu and the others tended to be better off. In order to collect this much money, he had actually used all his weapons and armor as additional collateral. All this was just for Long Chen's wild and crazy bet. Shifeng couldn't hold back having his heart jump a couple times in nervousness. "Brother Chen, you have to stay calm and steady. All your brother's belongings have all been put on the line." Li Hao arrived just before noon. With a light push on the ground, he jumped several meters into the air to land on top the martial arena, arousing a burst of cheers. However, this time the cheers weren't for his appearance, but rather because everyone was excited to see the start of a good show. Today Li Hao was wearing clean and neat robes that were quite attractive, and a proud thought arose in his mind. "Long Chen, the humiliation you've given me will be returned to you tenfold." But even after quite a while passed after Li Hao went onto stage, no one saw Long Chen appear. No one understood why he hadn't appeared, and some people began to wonder if perhaps he had chickened out. Just as everyone was wondering, an old man in charge of the martial arena coldly told him, "Your appointment for your battle is for 12:45, so you're early by almost an hour. You can either continue to wait on top the stage or you can come off to wait." Everyone booed in disappointment when they heard this, and the originally full of vigor Li Hao also became a bit dumbstruck as he had forgotten to check the time. "Whatever, I'll just wait for him on the stage. In any case, he's a person who's about to die, so his remaining time is more valuable than mine." Li Hao indifferently smiled, and just like that he sat down cross-legged on top the martial arena, taking the air of an expert. However, his attempt to maintain an expert's manner was only maintained for a short while before becoming a bit strange. Because it was noon, the sun was extremely powerful, and to make it worse, the martial arena was topped with black stone tiles, and by now it was already boiling to the point where it could fry an egg. But since Li Hao had already sat down, he couldn't stand back up or it would ruin his act. Therefore all he could do was suffer. Of course, some sharp-eyed people had already noticed that Li Hao's bottom had already begun smoking slightly, and in just a moment it became very obvious and the crowd's expression became very strange. "This guy is such an idiot. Is he trying to save face? The fight hasn't even begun and his butt is already burning," a woman gently laughed. In the distance, two veiled women were indifferently looking at the martial arena. "Speaking frankly, he's just a hypocrite," responded the other woman, shaking her head. "Sister Meng Qi, we've already been here for several days. When do you plan on withdrawing from the marriage agreement?" asked one of them. The woman who had been called Meng Qi elegantly creased her brows and somewhat awkwardly said, "Currently he's in a very difficult predicament, and if I were to bring up withdrawing from the marriage to him at this time, then it would be too cruel. Even I don't know what I should do. But delaying this matter isn't a solution. Master has already urged us several times. If we don't return back to the mountains soon, then we'll probably be punished. Furthermore, with Big Sister's talent you will definitely reach Xiantian and be able to touch heavenly Daos. The two of you will be in completely different worlds. There's no way for you to work it out." The woman sighed. "But I still feel that doing it in such a manner is still extremely unfair to him. Sigh, let's just watch a bit more." Meng Qi lightly shook her jade-like head, and a trace of distress appeared within her beautiful eyes. As Meng Qi hesitated, they saw a disturbance within the distant crowd. Turning to stare, they saw a black-robed man with sword-like eyebrows and bright eyes slowly walk up. His body seemed to have a unique aura, giving people a very profound sense. He appeared just like a well. On the surface he appeared like nothing out of the ordinary, but it was impossible to see through him. No one could manage to see through his depths, and his existence appeared like a mystery to them. Even Meng Qi and the other woman couldn't help but to feel some fluttering in their hearts when they saw his form. Compared to the Long Chen they had seen just a few days ago, it was like the difference between heaven and earth. The current him appeared to be full of self-confidence. Seeing Long Chen arrive, Li Hao jumped up, feeling a burst of scorching pain from his bottom. Blaming Long Chen, his anger rose even more and he angrily shouted, "Long Chen, come up to die." Long Chen didn't even spare a glance for Li Hao, and instead he scanned the crowd and met Shifeng's gaze. Shifeng gave Long Chen a slight nod, causing Long Chen to feel relieved. Not only did he see Shifeng, he also saw Fatty Yu and the others who had apparently come to cheer him on. Long Chen smiled over to them before turning his body to walk onto the martial arena. Li Hao had jumped up to show off his skill, but Long Chen decided to simply walk up. For the moment, the people who had bet on Long Chen's victory all felt that the money they had gambled was about to be lost forever. Long Chen. Seeing Long Chen walk up, these two words were angrily forced out of Li Hao's clenched teeth. "Idiot, your butt's scorched, isn't it?" Long Chen sneered to Li Hao. Actually, he had long since arrived, merely he just stayed in the shade further away and no one had noticed him. However, he had seen very clearly what had been going on the stage. 12:45 has arrived. Both parties must sign the life and death contract. At this moment the old man took out a document, and Long Chen indifferently smiled and signed his name on top of it. This time was different from the last duel. Conceding to the victor would have no effect this time. Life and death was held within the victor's hands. Li Hao also signed, and with a sinister expression he said, "You little bastard, today I will return all the humiliation you gave me 100-fold. Now that the life and death contract had been signed, there was no more need a referee. The current martial arena had now become the ground where they would decide who would die today. Blade wounds heal quickly, insults can't relieve anger, looks like you don't understand, you've come to provoke me so many times and I'm not enduring any longer." Long Chen took a deep breath, an extremely dense killing intent appeared within his eyes. Ever since Zhou Yaoyang had first said that he wasn't Long Tianxiao's son, many people had started using the same kind of insult against him. "Go die, bastard." Li Hao sneered, and with a loud bellow his whole body's spiritual qi started to circulate, and a spiritual energy visible to the naked ear could be seen fluctuating around his body. The crowd watching all nodded when they saw this. Last time Li Hao had been extremely unlucky. He hadn't made any preparations to protect his body and Long Chen had used one quick sneak attack to beat him. But this time he had properly prepared and set up his defenses. Although this was only the spiritual energy of qi condensation and had no way of leaving the body, circulating spiritual energy within the body for protection meant that an ordinary person would have very great difficulty causing injuries. After Li Hao set up his defenses, an evil smile appeared on his face. He charged towards Long Chen, both hands turning into claws aimed towards Long Chen's shoulders. These two claws of his were filled with spiritual qi, making them no different from iron fangs. If an ordinary person was to be hit by it, their shoulders would immediately break. But Li Hao completely degrade him. From below the arena a loud shout came from the person who Long Chen had sent flying within the Imperial College, Wang Mang. Wang Mang had now already lost half his teeth while still a youth. And as for any bone-growing medicinal pills, those were far too expensive for his family to buy. Nowadays he was already full of hatred for Long Chen, and seeing Long Chen about to be assaulted, he couldn't hold back from cheering. But Shifeng, Fatty Yu and the others all became extremely worried. From the very start Long Chen had not shown even the slightest cultivation base, causing their hearts to momentarily get stuck in their throats. Long Chen coldly smiled as he looked at Li Hao charged towards. Taking one step, his whole body turned into a shadow as it charged forward towards Li Hao. Bang! Chapter 9, Alchemist Guild. Bang! An explosive noise rang out, causing everyone to become completely dumbfounded. No one had noticed, But at some point Long Chen had appeared right in front of Li Hao just like a demon. This was due to his wind-chasing steps. This technique increased his speed to the max, especially in close range, and the explosiveness was something that was impossible to guard against. Li Hao's two claws hit nothing while Long Chen's leg viciously kicked out and hit him between the legs with such a ferocious force that his whole body was lifted into midair. After the explosive noise passed, a little ball flew out of Li Hao's trousers and was flung towards the crowd. Wang Mang was still imagining Li Hao tormenting Long Chen, making Long Chen suffer a life worse than death. But the current situation completely shattered this delusion of his, and his jaw dropped, dumb-stricken. He was completely oblivious to a small grape-sized thing that was now flying towards his mouth. By the time he noticed it, the thing had already entered into his open mouth. Before he could even react, that slippery thing passed through his throat into his stomach, bringing with it a grotesque, foul smell. Ah! Only now did Wang Mang react and desperately begin using a finger to dig at his throat, causing him to vomit. After a while, a small ball was vomited out. When Zhou Yaoyang and the rest of the people beside him saw this ball, they also started retching, swiftly scattering away from it. Ah! On the martial arena, Li Hao was tenaciously holding onto his crotch, his face twitching and contorting. If he hadn't set up his spiritual qi to protect himself, he would have long since lost consciousness from the pain. For a moment the whole audience was completely silent. Everyone's eyes roved from Li Hao on the stage to the distant round thing on the ground, and their expressions became extremely odd. "This is good for you. Now you'll be able to walk without slanting and tripping," Long Chen said, nodding his head. "You?" Li Hao's angry gaze seemed to want to tear him apart. His last family jewel was stripped of him, and now that it had entered Wang Mang's stomach it had already been corroded to the point that even if he collected it he wouldn't be able to use it. One was taken away by a wild dog while one was no longer usable. Li Hao was now destined to become a sterile person incapable of reproducing. "You fucker, go die." Stone-crushing fist. Li Hao crazily roared, forcefully circulating his spiritual qi to restrain his lower body's pain. His fist shot towards Long Chen, the wind whistling as it passed. The full power of his third heaven stage of qi condensation cultivation base exploded out. By now he had already descended into madness and completely forgotten about Zhou Yaoyang's instructions. The only thing on his mind was to completely destroy Long Chen. Seeing Li Hao become completely crazy, a cold intent appeared within Long Chen's eyes. He roared, the sound like violent thunder shocking the sky and shaking the ear, blasting the surrounding people's ears. An incorporeal aura engulfed Long Chen. Not taking any actions to avoid it, he also attacked with a fist. Spirit of the Bull. Boom! An explosion was followed by the sound of bones breaking. Li Hao let out a miserable scream, his blood flying everywhere. People were shocked and horrified to see that one of Li Hao's arms had been completely crushed. Long Chen was still resting in his punching position. His eyes were icy cold, his expression completely apathetic. A terrifying killing intent spilled out from him, shaking people's souls. The current Long Chen seemed like a cold-blooded death god, his whole body brimming with an icy cold killing intent that caused everyone to tremble in fear. The whole crowd was deathly still. The amount of power that he had released just now was something that even the seventh heaven stage of qi condensation Zhou Yaoyang felt somewhat afraid of. How is this possible? He can use battle skills? Isn't it impossible for him to cultivate? What the hell is happening? His expression is absolutely terrifying. People were unable to hold back their shock, and as for the ones who had previously ridiculed and sneered at Long Chen, they were all completely filled with fear. Seeing Li Hao lying on the martial arena, it was like they were seeing images of themselves. They couldn't help but to tremble, their spirits shivering. Even Long Chen himself was somewhat shocked. It appeared even he had underestimated the 9-star Hegemon body art. Otherwise, if it was normal person using a low-grade battle skill, it would not be able to release such a terrifying strength. Slowly walking over towards Li Hao, each of Long Chen's steps dropped loud and clear. The sound of it was like the overture of a murderer, each step pressing down on the people's hearts. Step, step, step. By now the angry expression Li Hao had had on earlier had vanished to be replaced with complete terror. Shaking and quivering he said, Don't come over. Li Hao wanted to run away, but the completely terrified him only now noticed that his body couldn't exert even the slightest strength. To him, the Long Chen who was slowly but gradually walking closer to him was like a nightmare which he couldn't run away from. Don't kill me. It was because of Zhou Yaoyang's instructions. Li Hao sobbingly begged. Below the stage, Zhou Yaoyang's expression changed and he angrily shouted, Li Hao, what nonsense are you saying? I'm not saying nonsense. You told us to handle Long Chen and that afterwards you'd give us some benefits. All this is because of you. Li Hao pointed towards Zhou Yaoyang as he hysterically rambled. In the face of death, he had already forgotten everything. Li Hao, you're asking for death. Zhou Yaoyang's face turned ashen, and his two eyes were filled with killing intent. Zhou Yaoyang, you bastard! You used me for your advantage. Long Chen, I'll tell you, Zhou Yaoyang is nothing more than a henchman dog in reality. Long Chen suddenly felt a chill in the air ordaining an attack. Sensing the air of death, he quickly retreated without even thinking about it. However, even after Long Chen had finished retreated, it didn't appear like anything had happened. But when Long Chen once again looked at Li Hao, he saw that Li Hao's eyes had already lost focus and he had already taken his last breath. Long Chen's expression changed slightly. Turning to look at the crowd, all he could see was a figure wearing conical bamboo hat who was quickly fleeing the scene. With just a few strides he had already disappeared from the crowd. The unexpected events caused an uproar amongst the crowd. Obviously that mysterious figure had killed Li Hao. Long Chen wins. After a brief spell of confusion, the martial arena's watchmen still ended up announcing this final outcome. Although Li Hao wasn't killed by Long Chen had already defeated him. If he had wanted to kill Li Hao it would have been as easy as turning his hand, so in the end they still announced that it was Long Chen's victory. Following Long Chen's victory, countless people sighed in regret. With this outcome they had no way to take back their bets. As for the tens of people who had bet of Long Chen, they all crazily shouted in joy. Fatty Yu and the others especially shouted out loudly. Lying on the martial arena, Li Hao would never again be paid any attention to. The martial arena's organizers would send a message to his family and they would come pick up his dead body. The life and death battles were all protected by the imperial capital. No one was allowed to secretly take revenge. Li Hao was only a low-born noble whose status was not especially high. If he died, then he died. There would not be any waves following. This was one of the unbreakable rules of the imperial capitals. Long Chen walked off the stage, receiving a heroic welcome from Fatty Yu and the others. Shi Feng tightly hugged him. You brat, when did you become so strong? And you didn't even tell anyone about. My heart almost leapt out watching you, grumbled Shi Feng. Brother Long, no wait, elder brother Long, in the future we'll all be muddling along with you. You have to cover for us, said Fatty Yu and the others with bright eyes. Long Chen laughed, of course. Come on, let's go to the betting place. In front of countless admiring stares and everyone's cheers, Long Chen received no less than 3 million gold coins. At the moment when the crystal card with 3 million gold coins landed in his hand, Long Chen was actually even more excited than he had been when beating Li Hao. He had known that Li Hao was nothing more than a little dog. But the words that he said right before he died caused Long Chen to become even more cautious than before. Originally he had thought that all the bullying had been because of enmities with his parents' generation, but that didn't match with what he had said. It seemed that it was not such a simple affair, and he himself was probably nothing more than a single chess piece. He was just a trash teenager while his family was completely impoverished. There was no need for someone to actively plot against him in such a deliberate and methodical manner. The clear reason would be due to someone clashing with his father. It seems like it's very complicated. But staring at the 3 million gold coins in his hand, Long Chen was filled with endless confidence. Was this the so-called rich and imposing manner? Leaving with the huge crowd, Long Chen found a tea house and invited everyone to eat whatever they want and return to them their money. However, the money that had been earned was kept with him. Long Chen gave everyone a promise that caused them to be endlessly excited. Everyone's future cultivation would all be taken care of by Long Chen. This caused Fatty Yu and the others to be madly joyous. They were all completely incapable of cultivating, and if someone else promised this to them they wouldn't believe it. However, Long Chen was originally the same as them. But now he had managed to dispatch Li Hao in such a quick way, so how could it not be true? Hearing Long Chen promise this, everyone was overjoyed. However, Long Chen told them to keep the secret, and they all frantically nodded. Their future cultivation was something that was basically just as important as their life, and adding on to that how solemn Long Chen's words were, they would not dare to treat it unimportantly. After Fatty Yu and the others all left, Long Chen stayed behind to chat a bit with Shi Feng. Shi Feng was a genius whose aptitude was the greatest amongst all the noble heirs. He was already at the 8th heaven stage of qi condensation and could enter into the 9th heaven stage at any time. Entering the blood condensation stage before 20 should not be that difficult for him. Through how Shi Feng had acted during these last two matters, Long Chen knew that he was definitely a person deserving of his trust. After asking about Shi Feng's current stage in his cultivation, Long Chen split up with him and went directly to the Alchemist Guild. The Alchemist Guild was in the south part of the imperial capital. It was the most sacred part of the entire imperial capital. Not even members of the royal family would dare to be rude towards the members of the Alchemist Guild. The Alchemist Guild was said to be spread throughout the entire world, and as for the guild in the imperial capital, it was nothing more one of its parts. What Long Chen needed to get this time was an alchemist's official identification. Having identification would mean that in the future it would be extremely easy and convenient for him to do what he needed. No matter where you went, alchemists were an extremely scarce occupation. With this identification, Long Chen's status would no longer be the same. Even if the Phoenix Cry Empire would have to think carefully before they would act against him. The most important thing was that he could use an extremely favorable price and get a preferential treatment when buying the Alchemist Guild's rare ingredients, letting him save the maximum amount of money. Although the Alchemist Guild only took up a couple dozens of acres on the ground, it rose dozens of meters into the air, making it extremely imposing and causing people to revere it. Entering into the lobby, two maids received Long Chen. But they were surprised when they heard that he wanted to take the examination for an alchemist identification. After all, Long Chen appeared to be only 15 or 16 years old and he didn't have any fluctuations of a cultivation base. However, the two of them still brought him into the refining hall. At this time the refining hall only had a dozen or so men inside. They were currently urging on their pill flames, appearing to be refining medicines. "Why are you here?" Just as Long Chen entered, an old man asked with an astonished expression. When he saw that person, Long Chen's heart erupted with a hidden anger. That old man was precisely the one who had treated his wounds. This person had clearly known that his injury had been no big deal, but by saying that it was possible he could lose his memory, he managed to con his mother into selling her jewelry. "I came here to take the alchemist exam." Long Chen calmed the anger in his heart. He'd pay back this bill to the old man later. "Alchemist exam?" The old man examined Long Chen from top to bottom. "Looks like your wounds from last time still aren't healed. You should go back and heal them." Long Chen frowned slightly as he insisted, "I really am here to take the alchemist exam." The old man's expression sunk. "I don't have time to waste on a little kid. Hurry up and beat it. Otherwise I'll get the guards to throw you out." Long Chen's anger once again exploded. Staring at the old man he shouted, "If your ears aren't completely deaf yet, then I'll repeat myself one more time. I am here to take the alchemist exam." By the end, Long Chen's shout was already a roar that reverberated through the entire Alchemist Guild. What person is making such a loud ruckus? Suddenly a thin old man walked over with a displeased expression. When Long Chen turned his eyes and saw him, a naughty grin appeared on the corner of his mouth. Chapter 10, Disciplining the Brat. Long Chen recognized the old man, and it wasn't just Long Chen who would recognize him. In the imperial capital, there would be very few people who wouldn't recognize him. He was the Alchemist Guild's chairman, Grandmaster Yun Qi. Senior Yun Qi, this brat suddenly ran over to make trouble. I was just about to expel him, the old man hurriedly explained when he saw Grandmaster Yun Qi. Long Chen rolled his eyes and feigning an extremely grateful expression, he said, "You are Grandmaster Yun Qi? Wonderful, Long Chen thanks you for the favor of saving his life." Originally Yun Qi's expression was displeased, but hearing Long Chen say this he couldn't help but become distracted, asking, "Child, are you misrecognizing me as someone else?" "Misrecognizing? No, definitely not." Long Chen shook his head. Pointing towards the old man, he said, "Through this Grandmaster, my mom paid several thousands of gold coins to buy a tiger bone pill from you. Only through this was I able to recover from my wounds. This little one truly cannot thank you enough." Hearing Long Chen recount this affair, the old man's expression immediately changed and Yun Qi's expression turned cold. Looking at the old man he said, "Guan Cheng, what is this about?" "Senior Chairman, don't listen to his rubbish." Guan Cheng hurriedly tried to explain. Why aren't you acknowledging it? To think that the people of our Alchemist Guild are of such a noble character then they don't even put their names on the good deeds they do. Only, the matter of you selling my mother a defective grade tiger bone pill is very well known." Long Chen coldly smiled. Although Guan Cheng was continuously shooting Long Chen meaningful glances, Long Chen continued to act as if he hadn't noticed. "Did you really think my Long family's money was so easy to swindle?" Guan Cheng was currently a senior member of the Alchemist Guild. Originally he was taught a bit by Grandmaster Yun Qi, however he wasn't some extremely gifted talent. However, after Guan Cheng had carefully and attentively followed by Yun Qi's side for a couple decades, Yun Qi had felt some pity on him and given him the position of attendant with some low-grade random jobs to do in the Alchemist Guild. Occasionally when he refined a garbage pill he would hand it over to Guan Cheng to handle. Normally these garbage pills would have their useful portion extracted out for some medicinal liquids. They definitely would not be allowed to be sold on the market. This was related to the profession's personal integrity. If it was leaked that Grandmaster Yun Qi had actually sold a garbage pill then he would become a joke amongst his fellow alchemists. Grandmaster Yun Qi sighed. Looking at Guan Cheng he said, "You followed me for several decades so you already understand my character. Leave and don't ever come back." Guan Chen's old face became deathly pale. His eyes holding a trace of unwillingness, he begged, "Senior, go." Yun Qi indifferently responded as he waved his hand. Guan Cheng nearly became paralyzed and fell to the floor. Yun Qi's declaration was equivalent to expelling him from the Alchemist Guild. An originally high and aloof attendant in a flash became someone completely lacking anything. Guan Cheng appeared like he had aged several decades. "Hey, I'm talking to you, stop faking. You've cheated and swindled people for so many years outside this guild that you've earned so much evil money you won't even be able to spend it all before dying. Why are you acting like you're deserving of pity?" Long Chen disdainfully said. As an attendant of the Alchemist Guild, this old man had become extremely close to quite a few noble families. After muddling along for so many years, he had definitely obtained many benefits. Looking at his face caused Long Chen to feel sick and disgusted. Guan Cheng's expression became furious, his eyes filled with bitter resentment. However, he didn't say anything and merely slowly walked out with his head down. Watching Guan Cheng go away, Grandmaster Yun Qi shook his head. Towards Long Chen he said, "Thank you, young man. Otherwise this old man would still be completely in the dark." Hee, that old man was someone who had cheated my family of one of our fortunes. I purposely came for revenge, there's no need to be so courteous. Long Chen laughed. Contrary to one's expectations, Grandmaster Yun Qi replied, Not bad. This young fellow is actually so straightforward and is clearly not suited for a treacherous and deceitful life." How could this youngster's intentions and manner be concealed for a whole lifetime? Since it's impossible to conceal, I might as well act like a good person. Long Chen spread out his arms as he replied. Grandmaster Yun Qi couldn't help laughing. Over the many years everyone would treat him with reverence. This was the first time someone would speak to him in such a joking manner, so now it was quite an enjoyable experience. Little fellow, surely you didn't come to my alchemist guild just to report this complaint. Of course not. I came here to take the alchemist exam. After saying this, Long Chen held out his right hand. Puff! A tiny flame leapt out of his fingertips. In order to leave a deep impression onto the Grandmaster, Long Chen's hand trembled, and the flame started to act like a wild monkey, playfully jumping around. Not bad control. Originally when he saw the flame, Yun Qi had only faintly nodded his head. Being able to agglomerate a pill flame at that age could be considered not bad. But Long Chen's following actions caused him to actually be somewhat moved. The ability to control the flame relied mostly on the amount of spiritual energy one had. Long Chen's ability to control it in such a lively manner demonstrated that his spiritual energy had surpassed an ordinary person by quite a bit. What he didn't know was that Long Chen was still holding back. If he were to bring out the secret arts from within his memories, then it might completely terrify this Grandmaster. Very good, your spiritual energy is at least twice as strong as an ordinary person, making you a good sapling to learn refining. Yun Qi nodded. Hearing Yun Qi say this, a stone fell inside Long Chen's stomach. Being able to hold as much hidden strength back as possible was still best. Come, I'll bring you to do the test. Saying this, Grandmaster Yun Qi brought Long Chen away. Looking at the two people leave, everyone who had previously been in the hall refining medicines with their pill flames couldn't help from being stunned. What? He didn't need to take to be appraised before directly going to do the test? How is this possible? Is he a relative of Grandmaster Yun Qi? Nonsense, he's not a relative. Isn't that kid the Imperial Capital's famous trash, Long Chen? The 10+ people in the hall were all there in order to take the alchemist exam, but according to the usual convention they had to meet the requirement of refining a certain herbal medicine first to show they met a certain level before advancing to take the exam. But Long Chen immediately skipped over this step, causing them to be incessantly furious. But there was no alternative for them. This was the Alchemist Guild, a supreme existence. No one would dare do a thing. They could only swallow their anger into their stomach. In an underground room of the Alchemist Guild, Grandmaster Yun Qi pointed towards a water crystal in front of them. Use your flame on it. Long Chen nodded. Extending a finger, he condensed a flame, slowly placing it on top of the water crystal. Several veins appeared on the water crystal when the flame touched it. Grandmaster Yun Qi faintly said, "Your pill flame has reached the Huang class low rank, just barely meeting the standard." Pill flames were split into Tian, Di, Xian, and Huang class, with each class also having 3 ranks. Long Chen's pill flame was agglomerated from himself and was not a beast flame or a heaven and earth flame. Therefore being Huang class low rank was very normal. Grandmaster Yun Qi then brought Long Chen to a shallow water pool. The water pool was only half a foot deep and the bottom was covered with hundreds of sparkling, pure pearls. Circulate your spiritual energy and see if you can cause the pearls to float up. Obviously this water pond wasn't a real water pond. Close examination revealed that the water was clearly spiritual mercury water. When Long Chen carefully touched it, he discovered that the water magnified his spiritual energy by greater than 10 times. This immediately relieved him, as his current spiritual energy was not strong enough to move objects without touching them. Apparently he had been worrying too much. Circulating his spiritual energy, he immediately found a dozen or so pearls being influenced by his spiritual energy as they slowly floated up. Suddenly Long Chen noticed that Grandmaster Yun Qi's expression was completely bewildered and shocked as he looked at those pearls. Damn, I'm about to be exposed. Long Chen hurriedly released the spiritual energy. Circulating his energy, he changed his face to become extremely pale like he was about to collapse in order to fake that his spiritual energy was overdrawn. Grandmaster, what rank do I count as? Long Chen gasped for breaths as he asked. Xian class? Grandmaster Yun Qi murmured. It was as if he hadn't even noticed Long Chen's current overdrawn state. Only a while later did Yun Qi notice that Long Chen was already weakly lying on the ground. If one had to give Long Chen's acting skills a rank, he would be God of Acting. Not only was his face as white as paper, but his eyes seemed weak and listless, giving him the appearance of someone who had excessively overexerted himself. Excellent. Your spiritual energy is exceptionally strong. Your talent is definitely moldable. I've definitely found a good sapling this time. Yun Qi smiled. Long Chen's eyes brightened when he heard this. Grandmaster Yun Qi, this little one very much wishes to study the Tao of the pill. Is it possible for me to become your official disciple? Yun Qi shook his head. I can't. Go carefully train, and later I will present an opportunity for you that will let you jump to the peak of the pill Tao. Hearing Yun Qi refuse, Long Chen laughed with embarrassment. Actually, the main thing is I want a higher reputation so that when I go out no one would dare to bully me again. Yun Qi stared blankly before bursting into laughter. Someone like Long Chen who spoke so directly caused him to not know whether to laugh or cry. How many years had it been since he had met such an interesting youngster? However, Long Chen's abnormal spiritual energy did cause him to have an excellent opinion of him. Don't worry. Later I'll give you a pill apprentice identification plate. Who would dare continue to bully you? Yun Qi laughed. Long Chen became excited. Normally, if a person wanted to join the Alchemist Guild, they had to first pass the exam to become a medicinal expert, and after that they had to wait another year before they could obtain the qualifications to take the test to become a pill apprentice. Medicinal expert was just an entry-level rank, but it still caused countless people's eyes to turn red in envy. As for pill apprentice, it was the actual start of pill cultivation. With your current pill flame and spiritual energy, it's still quite difficult for you to refine a pill. However, within a year you will definitely be able to refine pills, so this can't count as violating rules. I'm simply giving it to you a bit early, smiled Yun Qi. Long Chen was extremely grateful. Although in terms of technique and skill he was strong enough to look down on anyone, Yun Qi was definitely a senior who was worthy of respect. Grandmaster Yun Qi personally made a pill apprentice identification plate for him, and then in addition he also gave him a medicinal cauldron and a set of pill robes. The pill robe was extremely luxurious, and on the abdomen was a single embroidered pill star, the sign of a pill apprentice. The medicinal cauldron was made of fire copper and pure gold, and its design was very elegant. It was many levels higher than the old cauldron he had bought. Other than these two things, what pleasantly surprised Long Chen was that Grandmaster Yun Qi had even gave him a spatial ring. This was a miraculous kind of ring. As long as you sent your spiritual energy into the ring, you could open up an interior space connected to the ring and store any random things. As for its value, it was an extravagant commodity worth hundreds of thousands of gold coins. Before, Long Chen didn't even dare to dream about obtaining one. Inserting his spiritual energy into the ring, he found that the space inside was at least 3 meters wide, causing him to be extremely grateful. Under Grandmaster Yun Qi's advisement, Long Chen used his identification plate to buy medicinal ingredients for half price. He could also study the senior generation's pill refining experiences free of charge. Long Chen suddenly had a feeling like he had jumped from being a chicken to a phoenix. Within the Alchemist Guild, he bought a large amount of the Feng Fu pill's medicinal ingredients and some other herbs. By the time Long Chen left the Alchemist Guild, he felt like a completely different person than when he entered. Previously he had been worthless, but now he was worth millions. Even his back was held completely straight. In the future he could look down his nose on others. When Long Chen had collected his vast harvest, he returned home. Just as he entered, he saw Bauer at the entrance. As soon as she saw Long Chen, she straightaway brought him towards Mrs. Long's room. As soon as he entered, he became dumbstruck, his heart wildly jumping in chagrin. Chapter 11: Flawless Beauty. An absolutely beautiful woman was standing before Long Chen. She had willowy eyebrows over limpid clear eyes, cherry red lips popped over her pale skin, and a cascading waterfall of hair descended all the way to her waist. When she saw Long Chen enter and their gazes met, Long Chen was struck dumb. That young woman appeared like a fairy from out of this world. It was as if due to her very presence, the entire room had become a wonderland. For a moment, Long Chen was unable to do anything but stare foolishly at her. Her cheeks reddened slightly and she turned away from him. When Mrs. Long saw this, she scolded, "Chen, hurry up and greet Meng Qi. She's your future bride." Mrs. Long's face lit up with happiness when she said bride, but Long Chen was extremely startled since he had never even heard of such a thing. "Greetings, Ms. Meng." Seeing his mother's stare, Long Chen finally recovered and bowed to her. A slight blush crept over Meng Qi's face and she also curtsied back slightly. Although her cherry lips moved slightly, she didn't say anything back in response. Seeing all this, Mrs. Long smiled and said, "Meng Qi, you and Long Chen are both youngsters. You two can go chat for a bit while I go prepare some food." Giving Long Chen an encouraging glance, Mrs. Long withdrew, leaving only the two of them in the room. Facing such a beautiful woman, Long Chen had a feeling of having no idea what to do for the first time. After a long pause, he finally managed to choke out a single phrase. "Please sit." Meng Qi shook her head. A complicated expression flashed over her face when she glanced at Long Chen. "I have something to say to you. Can we change locations?" Long Chen frowned slightly, but he still nodded and the two of them left the Long estate and found a more secluded spot. Once they arrived, Meng Qi reached into her robes and slowly pulled out a seal. Long Chen almost cried out in shock when he saw it, for he recognized it to be a summoning contract that only Beastmasters could use. A fluctuation rippled through space, interrupting Long Chen's thoughts. A huge monster over 10 meters long with the head of a lion and body of an eagle appeared in front of them with a majestic aura coming off of it. Although Long Chen was unable to cultivate before, he still had managed to study up on illustrations of magical beasts. This beast was called the Lion Eagle, a terrifying second-rank magical beast. The Lion Eagle in front of them had clearly not reached its complete maturity, but in terms of battle strength, ordinary blood condensation cultivators were not its match. This normally vicious beast was exceptionally docile in front of Meng Qi as it quietly lay on the ground. Meng Qi lightly walked up onto the Lion Eagle's back and then said to Long Chen, "Come up." Long Chen glanced at Meng Qi and seeing a hint of haste, he muttered quietly under his breath and walked on. This was the first time Long Chen had ever climbed onto the back of a magical beast, and he couldn't help being a bit nervous that it might accidentally go crazy and start eating people. The Lion Eagle suddenly spread its wings and its huge body brought the two of them soaring into the sky. Long Chen was almost thrown off when it leapt into the air. Fortunately, a pale hand supported Long Chen, letting him awkwardly recover. But when he saw a faint amusement on Meng Qi's face that seemed to want to laugh, Long Chen couldn't help feeling embarrassed. "Aha, I'm just a bit clumsy." Long Chen smiled slightly and found a lame excuse. Meng Qi laughed at that, but she quickly felt embarrassed and turned around. The Lion Eagle's flying speed was very great and in just a few minutes they flew out of the imperial capital and descended onto Sunset Mountain. The setting sun spilled out a blood-red color that covered the entire imperial capital, an extremely beautiful scene. Both of them stood at the peak of the mountain, neither of them saying anything. As Long Chen stared at the imperial capital, a trace of helplessness flashed in his eyes. "Long Chen, Meng Qi hesitated a long while before finally sighing and opening her red lips. "Are you here to get out of the marriage?" Long Chen didn't turn to look at her. His gaze stayed focused on the imperial capital. Meng Qi's heart shook and a trace of disbelief appeared on her beautiful face. "You already knew." "I guessed." Long Chen slowly turned to look at her beautiful faultless face and said, "Thank you." "You're thanking me?" Meng Qi asked in confusion. "Thank you for not bringing this up in front of my mother. You didn't hurt her old heart, and you also let me save face, so I thank you." Long Chen smiled. Meng Qi carefully looked at Long Chen. A couple days ago, She had already learned about Long Chen's situation the past few years. She had thought that he would become angry when he learnt why she had come here and maybe even go completely mad and wildly curse her. But she had never thought he would give this kind of response. I know you're a proud and gifted woman, for you are already able to control a second-rank magical beast at such a young age. As for me, I'm just a normal person. We're from two different worlds, so you're not wrong to want this. There's no need for you to feel bad about it. Long Chen laughed lightly and his smile was very warm and comforting. But when Meng Qi looked at this smiling expression, her heart ached in an indescribable way. This young man, practically a boy, had already suffered so much misfortune, and now she was personally leaving another scar on him and pressing salt onto the wound. Was this not too heartless? Give me a couple days and I'll convince my mother to decline this marriage. I promise you it won't take too long. After saying this, Long Chen slowly turned around and walked away. The setting sun illuminated his slim figure on the middle of the mountain path, making him appear somewhat miserable. Looking at Long Chen's fading figure, tears streamed out of Meng Qi's eyes and her hand covered his cherry lips. Was I right to do this or was I wrong? A young woman slowly walked over from behind Meng Qi and quietly consoled her. Big sis, now that everything's been said, it's already over. Although, this Long Chen really does appear pitiful. The two women stared at Long Chen's back until he completely disappeared. Once Long Chen descended the mountain, his mood became increasingly depressed. From the first moment he saw Meng Qi, he had felt a strong feeling of love and attraction. Someone like Meng Qi was like a fairy from heaven. For a normal man like Long Chen, it would have been strange if he wasn't attracted to her. But just as this love surfaced, it was doused in icy water before it could be expressed. Long Chen's spiritual perception was exceptionally powerful, so he was exceptionally sensitive towards other people's emotions. The moment Meng Qi had shown her personal power by calling the lion eagle, he had already known things were not good. I've lost love before I could even fall in love. Long Chen was miserable inside. He wanted to scream madly. He had suffered through so much repression and wrongs, but he had never let a single cry out. But this time he truly did feel an urge to weep. He could sense that Meng Qi was a kind woman, otherwise there was no need for her to do it like this, and she could have directly declined the marriage. It wasn't as if he wanted to have the marriage arrangement annulled, but what could he do? He could scream and cry at the heavens all the liked, but what was the point? Sure, maybe if he had begged her then the marriage might have gone through, but at that point it wouldn't even mean anything. It was better to just let it go. Although his heart ached, he could still bear it. By the time he got home, night had already descended. His mother immediately began to rain questions down on him. What did the two say? Did they make any progress? Were there any feelings between them? Doing his best to answer and brush off the questions for a while, Long Chen finally managed to ask, Mom, how did Meng Qi and I end up in an arranged marriage, and why didn't you tell me about it? Pain appeared in Mrs. Long's eyes when he asked this, but it was quickly concealed again. She told Long Chen that their two families were initially on very good terms. Their fathers were life and death friends, and they decided that their children, if they were both male they'd be brothers, if they were female they'd be sisters, and if they were one male and one female, they would be husband and wife. Long Chen sighed. So your generation was all happy and carefree, but now when it comes to us, all we have is bitterness. Mom, I feel that me and Meng Qi aren't suitable for each other. Long Chen thought about it for a long while, but in the end he could only face it headfirst. What? Mrs. Long stared at Long Chen in disbelief. Mom, don't get too emotional. What I'm saying is that Meng Qi and I just aren't suitable. After all, Long Chen couldn't continue. No, that's crazy talk. Meng Qi is such a beautiful woman. How is she unsuitable for you? Mrs. Long was angered so greatly that she couldn't help swearing. Mom, listen to me. Love requires that both parties are willing. You didn't get our consent before setting this up for us. That's just too arbitrary. Are you trying to anger me? Mrs. Long couldn't even understand Long Chen's words anymore, and she was angered to the point that tears were falling. Long Chen was extremely embarrassed, but it wasn't as if he could say the truth. All he could do was stand there as Mrs. Long cursed and cursed. Suddenly, his mother asked, "Chen, tell your mother the truth. Is Meng Qi wanting to get out of this?" "How could that be possible? Meng Qi is a good lady. It's just me who feels that this is too sudden and I can't accept it," hastily replied Long Chen. "No need to say any more. Child, it's your mom and dad's fault." Mrs. Long wasn't stupid. She naturally knew what kind of character her son had. After thinking about it for just a moment, she knew that the situation wasn't as simple as he said. She hurriedly hugged Long Chen and cried bitterly. "Mom, it's not as bad as you think. I just think we're not suitable now. That doesn't mean we might not get along better in the future," laughed Long Chen. "It's all part of my plan. First annul this marriage arrangement, and then let your child use his own skills to pursue her back as a daughter-in-law. Wouldn't this be the best-case situation?" What part of that is easy? Meng Qi is a beautiful goddess. Who knows how many people are pursuing her? Without this marriage contract, when will you ever get your chance?" She sighed and continued, "But you're also right. This kind of thing can't be forced. Since it's your marriage and you're now old enough, you can decide for yourself." "Thank you, Mom." Long Chen finally relaxed. Mrs. Long took out an old wooden case from under her bed, taking out a thin piece of paper from within it and handing it to Long Chen. "This is your marriage contract. If you want to get out of it, just tear it apart." Receiving that thin piece of paper, Long Chen's heart ached. An absolutely heavenly beautiful woman was about to be lost in such a way. It really was lamentable. Chapter 12: A New Goal. Atop Sunset Mountain, the sun was just beginning to rise when Meng Qi saw Long Chen walk back with the marriage contract. Despite this being what she wanted, she couldn't bear to do it. Her hand trembled, but she simply couldn't take that thin piece of paper. Long Chen smiled slightly. Gripping her hand lightly, he handed the marriage contract to her. When he touched her beautiful hand, his heart shook and it took a huge effort to keep himself calm. "Take it. You're a nice girl, and although the situation is as it is, I don't hate you in the slightest." With one hand in the grasp of Long Chen, Meng Qi's body shook. Originally, she wanted to take her hand back, but it was as if she couldn't control her own body. Long Chen's words caused her heart to ache, and the tears within her eyes spilled out. She choked out, "Long Chen, I'm sorry. You really are a nice person. I should make my move now while I have a chance." His heart was plummeting, but his expression was still warm and calm. He acted in a brotherly manner, reaching out and gently wiping away her tears. It was only with his greatest strength that he managed not to become engrossed with her beautiful face. Her charm was truly just too astonishing. Without his powerful spiritual strength, he would have already become enchanted. But at this time he had to continue resisting. With a faint smile, he said, "Meng Qi, this isn't your fault. If you want to blame someone, you should blame our fathers. Those two old conkers played a practical joke on us." The originally sobbing Meng Qi couldn't help laughing when she heard his unfilial and ridiculous words. The smile that blossomed on her tear-streaked face was like dew-covered spring flower. Her beauty was something that could not be replicated. Gazing at that face, Long Chen blurted out, "Meng Qi, you're really beautiful." But he regretted it as soon as he said it. Despite his attempts at self-control, his male wolf side still appeared. Long Chen was so angry he wanted to punch himself. Luckily, Meng Qi didn't become angry after hearing Long Chen's praise. Her face turned red and she rolled her eyes in a cute way that was another kind of beauty. Crap, Long Chen, if you miss out on such a beautiful woman, what would be the point of living? Right, I just have to do everything I can. Don't worry about danger or saving face." Long Chen sighed and let go of Meng Qi's hand, leaving the marriage contract with her. "Actually, with your current status, you didn't even need to notice my existence. We're two people in two different worlds. But you still came. I know that you came because you didn't want me to harbor any false hope and have me waiting forever till the end. For you to want this is completely faultless. On the contrary, I am extremely grateful to you. Longchen, are you just saying this to try to make me feel less guilty? With the marriage contract in her hand, her voice trembled slightly as she spoke. No, I'm saying the truth. But from today onwards, I have a distant goal now, laughed Longchen. What is it? Asked Meng Qi. From today onwards, I will put all my effort into cultivating. Once my strength is great enough, I'll come find you. The current marriage contract has become invalid, but I'll start to chase after you again starting now. Although he was smiling, his eyes were filled with determination. No one could doubt his resolution. Meng Qi was speechless. This was the first time she had ever met someone who was so bold to confess to her, and even more shocking was this person was a man she had personally delivered a deep grief. Her thoughts were in complete confusion and she didn't know how to respond. Should she decline or accept? You don't need to feel any pressure. This is just my own wishful thinking. A kind woman like you is someone worthy of having me, Longchen, guard with my life. But before I can pursue you, I have to properly cultivate and become a true expert. Only then will I have the qualifications to protect you. In order to get those qualifications, I'll cultivate with all my might. It doesn't matter whether you accept or decline me, I'll still continue like this, said Longchen with resolve. Meng Qi's face was completely red. Although she had previously come from a humble origin, ever since she had entered into a cultivation sect, everything had changed. This was the first time anyone had dared to confess so brazenly to her. Seeing Longchen's determined expression, her thoughts were a wild tumble and she was unable to say anything. There's hope, thought Longchen in satisfaction as he looked at the bewildered Meng Qi. Right now the most important thing was for Meng Qi to not feel any dislike with him. That would already be considered a success and a small step forward. The next steps would be to continue stirring her emotions until he moved her core. Longchen was about to continue when a terrifying aura exploded out. Meng Qi's expression changed and she stepped forward, placing Longchen behind her. She readied herself, prepared for anything. She waited for a moment as she assessed the situation before relaxing slightly. A huge wasp appeared in front of them. It was over 15 meters long and its body was covered in gaudy lines that would cause people's scalps to turn numb. Longchen was alarmed, as that was not only a second-rank magical beast, but an exceptionally violent blood rage wasp. Even a third-rank magical beast wouldn't easily go provoke it because even they would at least be gravely injured if pierced by its stinger. But after a brief moment of fear, a certain thought arose as he looked at Meng Qi's beautiful back. You may be able to stand in front of me this time, but I will stand in front of you for a lifetime. That huge blood rage wasp landed onto the ground, its terrifying cry still lingering in the air. A man jumped off from its back. The man appeared to be in his 20s. He was tall and very proper, giving off a noble feeling. But arrogance was written all over his face, destroying his image. As soon as the man saw Meng Qi, his eyes lit up in unconcealed adoration. Junior apprentice sister, Master is very displeased that you haven't returned in so long, so he sent me to bring you back. At first he was smiling brightly, but as soon as he saw Longchen he frowned and asked, Who is this? Could it be? Coldness resurfaced in his eyes, but he once more concealed it. Don't be crazy. I'm just asking this young master some questions. Meng Qi evidently wasn't good at lying and panic flashed in her eyes. Turning to Longchen, she said, Young master, thank you for your help. Her gaze towards Longchen held many things, but before Longchen could carefully look, Meng Qi had already gotten onto her steed and flown up. That man glanced at Longchen and coldly snorted. With just a point of his finger, a transparent arrow appeared in front of him and shot towards Longchen. Longchen was still thinking about the look Meng Qi had given him. He hadn't expected that man to suddenly attack him, so he was completely unable to dodge in time. That arrow had been condensed from spiritual strength and so was completely incorporeal. If ordinary people were to be struck by it, their spirit would immediately break and they would be reduced to a simpleton. Since he was no longer able to dodge due to his surprise, he could only hastily use his spiritual strength to block it. Although his spiritual strength was great, he had never cultivated any soul arts, so he had little chance of being able to block it. Suddenly, another arrow shot out and blocked the man's attack. A powerful explosion blew Long Chen several feet back. Senior apprentice brother Shi, Master would be quite displeased to learn you attacked an ordinary mortal like this. At some unknown time, another woman had appeared beside the two of them. His expression changed slightly, but he still laughed. Junior apprentice sister, you misunderstand. I'm just testing him out a bit. How could I possibly really hurt him? Long Chen's expression was extremely ugly. With his spiritual strength, he could clearly tell that that bastard had intended to cripple him. But it wasn't just that he had attacked him. The look he had given Meng Qi had also caused Long Chen to feel a burst of anger. Adding the attack onto that, and Long Chen was now fuming with anger. This young master, this is an inner disciple of our Wind Spirit Pavilion. His cultivation is very high, so you'll have to work hard. After she said that, she purposely winked at Long Chen. Senior apprentice brother Shi, let's go. Although she said this, she was clearly waiting for him to go with her. He glanced at Long Chen and indifferently laughed. Stepping onto the blood rage wasp, the two of them departed. Long Chen couldn't help cursing, this damn crap brother Shi, I won't forget this. After releasing his anger, Long Chen calmed down. No matter what, he had at least gained something from today. Although the marriage arrangement had been annulled, he had at the least given Meng Qi a good impression. The most important thing was that when Meng Qi had left, she had placed the marriage contract preciously within her robes and hadn't immediately torn it apart. This left him with a great amount of hope. But at the same time, it gave him a great sense of urgency. How many could withstand the charm of an outstanding woman like Meng Qi? Plus there was that crap brother Shi beside her. His hopes could be dashed at any moment. And even if he got rid of crap brother Shi, there would also come other crap brothers. No matter what, he had to quickly raise his cultivation base. Although he had gained the Alchemist Guild's emblem, the Alchemist Guild was a neutral power that didn't participate in any fights. He would have to rely on himself for everything. The kind of life he had lived before he had beat Li Hao had raised Long Chen's wariness. He suspected that it was possible someone was using his mother and him to control his father. At this time, his father had refused to answer the royal family's summons multiple times. Most likely he already knew something was going on. The longer things stretched out, the less value the mother-son duo would have and the greater danger they would be in. After returning home, Long Chen locked himself in his room and ordered that no one was to disturb him. He then took out the medical ingredients he had stored in his spatial ring. Last time he was at the Alchemist Guild, Yunqi had given him a copper-gold cauldron that was a great aid to him. Cauldrons were an essential tool to alchemists, and there was a great deal of knowledge and technique involved with them. Long Chen's old cauldron was complete trash, and not only did it waste a great deal of heat, it used up a large amount of Long Chen's pill flame. And in terms of quality, the greatest difference was that the old one couldn't seal in the spiritual qi of heaven and earth. Spiritual qi would rush out while impurities would rush in. Such a cauldron could not possibly produce any good pills. Cauldrons required a skilled artisan to forge, and as for Long Chen's old cauldron, it had been made by just an ordinary worker. But there was no way around it. A decent cauldron cost several 100,000 gold coins, maybe even millions. There was no way for Long Chen to afford it. As for the cauldron Yunqi had given Long Chen, it was a first-tier medicinal cauldron. Only pill apprentices and other pill cultivators had the qualifications to use it. With this new cauldron, Long Chen was finally properly equipped. I have to pick up the pace. Otherwise, even my future wife might leave me in the future. Chapter 13 Feng Fu Initial Mastery. With a muffled explosion, the pill furnace shook briefly before calming down. 9 plump medicinal pills lay quietly within. A dense, refreshing pill fragrance came from them. Long Chen smiled in satisfaction. He reached in and took out one of the medicinal pills. It was completely smooth and round with a faint luster, and there was even a layer of faint lines. Although the pill lines are faint and its color isn't at its peak, which means the pill has lost some spirituality, it is already just barely at the middle-grade pill level. This was the first patch of middle-grade medicinal pills that Long Chen had refined. The quality of a medicinal pill was dependent on the pill furnace, the pill flame, the spiritual strength, etc. Not a single one of them could be lacking. The current Long Chen's spiritual strength was definitely good enough, but the pill furnace was too weak, and as for the pill flame, well, that was even worse. To use an average first-tier pill furnace as well as the worst kind of pill flame to refine a middle-grade medicinal pill, well, in the entire pill refining world, perhaps only Long Chen, who had fused with a pill god spirit, could do such a thing. In just a short time he had refined 20 batches of pills and created over 100 lower-grade Feng Fu pills that were now quietly lying within his spatial ring. Long Chen had quietly heard about what was going on in the world outside his seclusion. Li Hao had been killed, so naturally he wasn't a threat anymore. The imperial capital had offered a reward for the capture of whoever had killed him, but the urgency surrounding this case had faded extremely quickly. Long Chen sneered. Even if they were just putting on an act, they should have at least followed through. Did they think that Long Chen was an idiot? A noble heir had been killed just like that. To simply end the affair just like that, it was crazily bold. Although he knew this, Long Chen didn't dare take action now. Without a certain amount of strength, he had to wait and protect himself first. His father was currently guarding the wild border and didn't know anything about what was going on here. Furthermore, according to the rules of the imperial capital, all generals that were stationed outside were not allowed to have their families leave the imperial capital. To be honest, this was just in order to force them to follow orders. Long Chen knew nothing about what was going on with his father at this time. All he knew was what he had inferred so far. His father would not be coming back to his side. Their noble estate had used to be extremely rowdy and busy. But as he grew up and his father continued to fight on the border, fewer and fewer people began to visit. Eventually, their estate wouldn't even have friends come over to celebrate the new year. Over the past few years, the Long household had continuously declined, its position within the imperial capital becoming lower and lower. Furthermore, Long Chen had become the target of all his peer noble heirs. But not even the slightest news came from Jin Yuanho. Long Chen couldn't help feeling a bit resentful to his father, but he was always fiercely reprimanded by his mother whenever he brought that up. After his awakening a couple days ago, Long Chen had finally realized something was wrong. The previous him had been thinking far too simply about the situation. For his father to refuse multiple summonings, he naturally had to have his own reasons. It couldn't be just because the battle against the barbarian tribes. If he had just refused once or twice, that would have been one thing. But he had refused to answer his summons multiple times, causing many of the nobles in the imperial capital to feel dissatisfied with Long Tianxiao. There was also people secretly spreading rumors that he was plotting a rebellion, but no matter how wildly these rumors spread, no response came from Long Tianxiao. 3 years ago, the royal family ceased to issue any further summons to him, but from then on, the days of the Long household became even worse. First, the Long family's salary was cut. No income came in any longer, immediately forcing them into poverty. Then even the noble heirs started to bully Long Chen. And then the last time Long Chen had been beat, that old swindler had conned the Long family of so much money. Long Chen had finally realized something was up. Someone was slowly forcing the mother-son duo into desperate straits. It was obviously to make Long Tianxiao surrender, but as for what secrets were behind this, Long Chen had no idea. But what he was sure of was there was at least one person in the shadows that was strategizing against his father, and he was definitely extremely powerful. I can't deal with that now. A hungry wolf will eventually reveal his fangs. What I need to do now is increase my strength. After giving Bauer a few simple instructions, Long Chen immediately began his seclusion. The Feng Fu star's embryonic form had already been condensed, so what was next was simple. All he needed to do was continuously feed it medicinal energy. The Feng Fu star on the bottom of Long Chen's foot was unceasingly absorbing the Feng Fu pill's medicinal energy and was quickly growing larger. Under Long Chen's crazy consumption of the pills, the originally pea-sized Feng Fu star became several times larger over 7 days. It was as if an entirely new space was forming on the bottom of Long Chen's foot. After growing to the size of a longan fruit, it no longer continued to grow. Under the continual absorption of medicinal energy, countless faint lines started to appear over the Feng Fu star. The faint lines began to slowly revolve. Boom! When the final middle-grade Feng Fu pill was absorbed, that originally completely silent Feng Fu star finally trembled and started to wildly absorb the outside world's spiritual energy. Yes, I finally succeeded. Long Chen roared as he felt his entire body become full of energy. But right now it's just the initial success. According to the 9-star Hegemon body art, each star requires 9 transformations to become perfect. My Feng Fu star has only just reached an initial complete form, so if I were to describe it as how the outside world cultivates, it might not even be as far as reaching just the first heaven stage of qi condensations. Letting out 3 punches into the air, the wind's roar shook his eardrums as the wall wildly shook and nearly collapsed. He was able to release such a force without using any spiritual qi and relying solely on the strength of his physical body. Long Chen couldn't help going mad with joy. Although there were drawbacks, especially with how slow it was, the 9-star Hegemon body art strength was absolutely amazing. At only the first heaven stage, the current him was already so much stronger than when he had crushed the stone grinder with just a single fist. Hee, if I can continue like this, I'll definitely be able to take back my fiancée soon, laughed Long Chen. Thinking about Meng Qi's face, a burning desire lit up within him. Next time I see that damn brother Shi, I'll beat him up so badly he won't know up from down. Suddenly Long Chen clapped his head. After focusing on his seclusion so much, he had forgotten today was the day to go to the Imperial College. Seeing that the day was already starting to brighten, he hastily put on a new pair of clothes and rushed to the Imperial College Palace. He had a bright smile along the entire journey. He had happily found that his Feng Fu star was able to store an extremely great deal of spiritual qi. When he refined pills in the future, he wouldn't have to worry about his spiritual qi being insufficient anymore. Last time he had fought with Li Hao, Long Chen had used the battle skill spirit of the bull and had found it to be extremely powerful. He had defeated Li Hao in just 1 blow. But that 1 blow had consumed almost all his spiritual qi. Now he wouldn't have to worry about that anymore. Sensing how much spiritual qi was stored in his Feng Fu star, he estimated that he had enough to use the spirit of the bull dozens of times. This was the difference between having a Feng Fu star and not. The greatest impact, however, was that with the increase of his cultivation base, his physical strength had also risen rapidly. Although he hadn't tested it, it was definitely enough to intimidate enemies. In the midst of his self-celebration, he arrived at the Imperial College. He became once more well-behaved as he walked through its gates and hurried over to the literature hall. As soon as he entered, the originally noisy literature hall became completely silent. Li Hao's death was something many people had trouble accepting. All the noble heirs had personally gone and witnessed Long Chen's single domineering fist. The noble heirs that had originally ridiculed Long Chen now couldn't help being afraid. "Ha, brother Long." Fatty Yu and the others all laughed and hastily came over to him. "Brother Long, you're becoming more and more handsome. Brother Long, please sit. Brother Long, have some tea. Brother Long, I'll give you a back massage." Long Chen laughed and scolded, "No need for all this crap. But if you can get me some food that would be good, I still haven't eaten breakfast." Long Chen found a corner to sit at. Fatty Yu had already brought over the refreshments and all of them were completely fixed on Long Chen. He really was hungry at the moment, as for the past few days he had basically only consumed pills to the point that he was sick of them now. Now he quickly devoured the refreshments. After eating for a short while, Long Chen saw that Shifeng had also arrived and waved to him. Once he walked over, Long Chen handed him a jade bottle. "Take this." In just a short time, you'll become our generation's first blood condensation cultivator. Long Chen's voice wasn't very loud, but Fatty Yu and the others all clearly heard. They were shocked speechless. Shi Feng was also shocked and hastily opened the jade bottle. An extremely dense pill fragrance wafted out. Inside was a single round medicinal pill. "What is this?" Long Chen smiled and indifferently said, "Condensation pills." Others might not know what a condensation pill was, but the 8th heaven stage of qi condensation Shi Feng knew. To 9th heaven stage qi condensation cultivators, the condensation pill was an absolute treasure that they all dreamed of obtaining. It had a great deal of energy that could allow someone at the peak of qi condensation to quickly break through to the blood condensation realm. Condensation pills were extremely precious to qi condensation cultivators, but had no use whatsoever for later stage cultivators. It was extremely difficult to refine. The failure rate was extremely high, especially at the most crucial pill condensation point. It was a nightmare to refine for most alchemists. An ordinary condensation pill would be worth more than 1,000,000 gold coins, and there were basically none on the market. 1,000,000 coins was something Shi Feng would never be able to obtain. "Long Chen, this. Don't worry about it. Since I've given it to you, take it. I didn't hesitate to take what's yours, so don't get all sentimental on me now." Long Chen waved his hand. Shi Feng nodded. At this point there was nothing more to say. Pushing down the strong emotions, he said, "Fine, I'll take it as soon as I reach the 9th heaven stage of qi condensation. There's no need to wait. Can't you see the lines on top of it? You can take it as soon as you get home. You'll quickly rise to the blood condensation realm." Only now did Shi Feng notice the medicinal pill had faint lines on it. He almost shouted in surprise. This was a middle-grade medicinal pill. That meant the value had multiplied several times. "Hurry up and take it. Amongst us brothers, there's no need to say useless things," said Long Chen. Shi Feng's eyes turned red as he took the medicinal pill. Compared to the medicinal pill, Long Chen's friendship moved him far greater. Brother Long. Brother Long. Fatty Yu and the others might not know what the condensation pill was, but they naturally knew medicinal pills were treasures. They were now staring at Long Chen like hungry wolves. Their urgent shouts caused goosebumps all over Long Chen, and he quickly stopped them, saying, "Don't worry, I've already said that I'll handle your problems." The real reason why these people were unable to cultivate was due to how deficient their spirit roots were. It was due to this that were unable to sense qi. Others might have no solution, but who was Long Chen? He had a fusion of a pill god's memories. If he couldn't handle something as simple as that, how could he possibly be called a pill god? Each person take a bottle. Take 3 drops a day. No strong foods, no alcohol, no sex. You'll see an effect in 7 days and should be able to enter qi sensing within half a month. As for how long it'll take to enter qi condensation, that'll be up to how hard you work. Long Chen handed each of them a bottle of medicinal liquid that he had personally made. The medicinal liquid wasn't very valuable and it should just barely be able to have an effect on these people's spirit roots. Long Chen wasn't a deity, there was a limit to how great the effect would be. It wasn't a problem to let them enter qi condensation, and as long as they weren't unlucky, they should be able to enter the blood condensation realm. But any future advancements past that were impossible. But to Fatty Yu and the others, just that was something of unimaginable value. They all stared hungrily at the bottles, wanting to take a drop right now. "Brother Long, if this really can let us cultivate, wouldn't that bring trouble to you?" Fatty Yu might be fat, but his brain wasn't small. He was the first to realize the problem. If Long Chen really could help them who were considered trash, it might have a negative impact on Long Chen. If some unscrupulous people were to notice, then it would be troublesome. Fatty Yu's intention was to ask whether they should help Long Chen hide this matter. But Long Chen laughed, "No need to worry. These medicines were all made by Grandmaster Yun Qi. If they want to, they can go find Grandmaster Yun Qi." Grandmaster Yun Qi? All of them were shocked and were about to ask whether he was joking when steps sounded behind them. Turning their heads, several of them became panicked. Chapter 14 Seventh Prince. The person who had come over was a youngster around 15 years old. He was wearing yellow robes and a very impressive golden crown. Greetings, Seventh Prince. Everyone hastily kneeled down when they saw him arrive. Even Shi Feng extremely unwillingly kneeled. The youngster's name was Chu Feng. He was the seventh son of the Phoenix Cry Empire's current emperor, the youngest of his sons. The rumors were that by the time he was born, Chu Tianhua had already entered seclusion. Even now he had yet to exit that seclusion, and Chu Feng had never actually met his father. Long Chen had heard quite a bit about Chu Feng. He knew he was the son of the Western Palace's empress and was spoiled rotten. He was extremely domineering and unreasonable, and other than the crown prince, there was supposedly no one that he feared. No one could guess as to why he had come here today. But when Long Chen saw Zhou Yaoyang by his side, he immediately knew that it was another attack on him. According to imperial etiquette, all noble sons had to kneel when seeing the royal princes. Fatty Yu, Shi Feng, and all the others were all kneeling. Unless they broke through to the blood condensation realm, there was no way to avoid this. Long Chen frowned. Some random relative wished to force him to kneel? Other than his mother and father, another person who could force Long Chen to kneel had yet to be born. Chu Feng indifferently looked over everyone, but his expression immediately darkened when he saw Long Chen sitting there acting all grand. How bold, Long Chen! The seventh prince is here, yet you actually refuse to follow etiquette and kneel. Are you trying to rebel? Zhou Yaoyang and the others surrounding the seventh prince had never expected that Long Chen would be like this and actually so boldly refuse to kneel to the seventh prince. Wang Mang, who had previously already taken a blow from Long Chen, celebrated inside when he saw this. He was the first to shout out against him in order to give Long Chen a bad name. The others were all too startled to do so, especially Fatty Yu's group. They all started to sweat profusely. Battles between noble heirs were small things. But if you committed an offense against the seventh prince, you might very well be executed. Long Chen's actions were extremely rebellious. Zhou Yaoyang became excited. He had a slight friendship with the seventh prince. Every now and then he used to accompany the idiot prince to food or amusement. He had had a sudden thought today to bring the seventh prince to see if he might suppress Long Chen. Even since Long Chen had defeated Li Hao, his fame had soared in the imperial capital. As for Zhou Yaoyang and the others, they had received a slap in the face as they had placed practically all their money on Li Hao's victory. Their group usually spent all their time indulging in drinking and pleasure. Now that they had lost all their money, those days were lost. He hadn't expected that the current situation would be even better than he had imagined. There was no need for he himself to instigate anything. Long Chen had already provoked the seventh prince's anger. Hearing Wang Mang's angry roar that was supposed to incite the seventh prince's anger, Long Chen contemptuously smiled. In a fake concerned voice, he said, "Wang Mang, how did Li Hao taste? Seeing how healthy and plump you are, I'd think that that egg you ate suited you pretty well." Wang Mang's expression immediately changed. His stomach heaved violently. What had happened then had left behind a strong aftertaste. Now whenever he ate, he would always think of what happened that day and involuntarily vomit everything back up. He was basically unable to eat anything from that memory. In fact, he had already quite obviously lost weight, so Long Chen's words were obviously sarcastic and just to insult him. His face turned purple from rage, but he didn't dare say even a single more thing. He was doing his best to control his stomach, and he was afraid that if he opened his mouth he would start vomiting. Long Chen, a small noble heir like you without an official rank or any achievements, dares to not kneel when seeing this prince? The seventh prince angrily demanded. The seventh prince was normally overbearing and spoiled, and even his fellow princes and princesses didn't wish to provoke him. He naturally was unable to hold back his anger when seeing a small noble heir be so rude to him. Looking back at this youngster whose baby features had yet to recede, Long Chen indifferently said, "You're just a child, so I won't bother with you. Go back to wherever you came from." What? Everyone's expressions changed. Was Long Chen asking for death? If he hadn't kneeled down, then the normal punishment was at most being locked up for a few days. But now that he had said such a disgraceful thing, it was the death penalty. Had Long Chen gone mad? "You're asking for death. Arrest him for me." The seventh prince angrily ordered the people around him. Those people were all Zhou Yaoyang's group, and they all celebrated when they heard the seventh prince's orders. Without even thinking, they all charged at Long Chen. They might have some misgivings during normal times, but with the seventh prince's order they no longer had to worry. With such a strong supporter, even if they killed Long Chen there wouldn't be any punishment. Just as they charged over, Long Chen kicked forward the table in front of him. That table was made from wood over 1,000 years old and was as heavy as iron. Its weight was shocking, yet it was still sent flying by Long Chen towards the charging people. Zhou Yaoyang bore the brunt of the table, roaring and using his entire strength to punch at the table. With a boom, that sturdy table was pulverized by Zhou Yaoyang's strength. He was definitely worth of being a strong person at the seventh heaven stage of qi condensation. His power would definitely shock ordinary people. But Zhou Yaoyang was still slowed down by the table, and Wang Mang zipped past him and was the first to reach Long Chen. Looking down on this idiot charging towards him angrily, a strange smile appeared on Long Chen's face before he punched out. His speed was practically inconceivable. No one even saw him move before they heard Long Chen's punch land on Wang Mang's face. Wang Mang was sent flying in a graceful arc through the air. But what was most shocking was that as he flew out, a dozen teeth were scattered from his mouth. His body smashed into a wall and he fainted. But his mouth was still wide open and everyone could clearly see that he was now completely toothless. Zhou Yaoyang paused slightly when he saw Wang Mang sent flying. Although Wang Mang's cultivation base wasn't that great, for him to be handled so easily still caused him worry. But this wasn't the time to retreat. Zhou Yaoyang roared and the power of a seventh heaven stage of qi condensation cultivator exploded out. Six Yang Fist. A fist followed with Zhou Yaoyang's shout. His fist was covered with a faint green light from his battle skill. The Six Yang Fist was one of Zhou Yaoyang's finishing moves that he had practiced for a long time. One fist had the force of half a ton. Without any hesitation, Long Chen sent a palm to receive his fist. When the fist and palm met, energy exploded out everywhere. But what caused people to be stupefied was that Zhou Yaoyang's unstoppable fist was indifferently swatted away by Long Chen. How is this possible? Zhou Yaoyang was the most startled. He felt as if his fist had met a huge mountain, and the pit of his stomach started to ache. As for Long Chen, he didn't blink an eye. He coldly said, "It's my turn now, Zhou Yang." Zhou Yaoyang suddenly turned numb. He felt as if he was being stared at by a huge vicious beast. His heart jumped violently as he hastily retreated. But he was unable to do so. Long Chen grabbed his fist tightly, and no matter how struggled, he was like a dragonfly trying to shake a tree and was unable to move him in the slightest. Zhou Yaoyang was completely astonished. Just what was this power? Long Chen was a monster in human form. Without the slightest use of a cultivation base, he had completely suppressed him with just the strength of his physical body. But Zhou Yaoyang was also a strong person. He had followed his father's people to go kill a magical beast before. He was someone who had seen blood before and wouldn't panic in the fast of danger. Seeing that he was unable to escape from Long Chen's grasp, he raised his leg and kicked out at Long Chen's stomach. This was an extremely vicious attack, but Long Chen didn't even look at that kick. Using a single hand, he blocked it. With a loud roar that shook people's eardrums, Long Chen lifted Zhou Yaoyang high into the air. In front of everyone's appalled gazes, Long Chen threw Zhou Yaoyang crashing onto the ground. Bang! The entire ground shook, and at the same time, the sounds of bones cracking caused everyone to turn cold. Zhou Yaoyang spit out 3 mouthfuls of blood, in addition to countless bits and pieces of some of his internal organs. Seeing him spit out blood and the smashed ground, everyone was completely silent. Long Chen finally felt a knot of anger within him be released. That anger had been stewing for a long time. Over these years, The person he had hated the most was Zhou Yaoyang. He was like a never-ending nightmare that tormented him. The entire hall was silent for a while, including the seventh prince. All the noble heirs that had been charging towards him gulped deeply, their bodies trembling involuntarily. As for Long Chen, he had maintained a calm expression throughout the entire ordeal. But the calmer he seemed, the more frightening he was to the others. The impression he gave the others was that of a merciless death god. Long Chen couldn't help smiling when he looked at Zhou Yang. Turning his gaze to the seventh prince, he slowly started walking over. The seventh prince had always been spoiled. He had bullied many people, but as for being bullied, that had never happened before. Seeing Long Chen walk over with an evil smile, his face immediately turned white. "What are you thinking? Get back." His voice was trembling with fear. Long Chen's eyes were filled with icy killing intent. He felt as if a knife was being held to his throat. As long as Long Chen wished, his head would roll to the floor. Long Chen didn't say anything. He was still smiling a frighteningly calm smile as he slowly walked over. Now everyone was stunned. What did Long Chen plan on doing? Was he planning on killing the seventh prince? No, don't come over. The seventh prince was continuously retreating, but now his back landed against a corner and there was nowhere else for him to run. Seeing Long Chen come closer and closer, the seventh prince's eyes became filled with fear. He could smell the scent of death. "You shouldn't have forced me. Don't blame me." Long Chen pitifully shook his head. His hand slowly reached into his robes before his fist suddenly approached the seventh prince's face. "No!" The seventh prince emitted a terrified screech that reverberated throughout the entire literature hall. Chapter 15 Split the Heavens. "No!" The seventh prince's miserable howl echoed throughout the literature hall. Everyone's hearts were jumping wildly. Was Long Chen really planning on rebelling? But what caused everyone to be dumbstruck was that Long Chen's hand had stopped before the seventh prince's face. The seventh prince had already shut his eyes in fear, but after waiting a while without feeling any pain, he eventually opened them. He saw that Long Chen was holding a jade tablet and was faintly smiling. Compared to the previous him who seemed like a death god, he was like a completely different person. "Seventh prince, look closely. This is an alchemist's tablet. So tell me, would I still need to kneel to you?" The seventh prince had already been frightened to death, so how could he possibly bother with checking to see if the tablet was counterfeit or not? "No, there's no need at all for that." The seventh prince looked at Long Chen in fright. When he had felt Long Chen's unrestrained killing intent, he had felt the fear of death. For a spoiled prince like him, the fact he hadn't wet himself was already a brave point for him. "Many thanks for understanding, seventh prince." Long Chen smiled. All you had to do while handling some entitled brat was scare them a bit. Even with an alchemist tablet, there was no way someone would dare act like this to an imperial prince. After all, this was the Phoenix Cry imperial capital. "Let me help you up." Long Chen slowly reached out a hand. The seventh prince had been frightened to the point that he was now sitting on the ground. Having been frightened like this, he momentarily didn't reach before nervously grabbing the extended hand. After all, he was a royal prince. If he really did cause the seventh prince to feel angry about him, then that would just be playing into Zhou Yaoyang's hands. Although Long Chen didn't care, being manipulated by people certainly wasn't a good feeling. Him acting like this now was giving the seventh prince a way out. The seventh prince was only 15, and although he was arrogant, he hadn't experienced much. Now under Long Chen's bad cop good cop actions, he was completely at a loss. After he got up, he didn't know what to say. "Seventh prince, do you want to sit down with us?" asked Long Chen. No, I have some stuff to do, so I'll go." After saying this, the seventh prince hastily turned and left. But once he walked out of the literature hall, the seventh prince felt that his legs had turned soft. Now there was a great fear of Long Chen in his heart. That faint death god smile he had made him sense that his life or death was entirely in Long Chen's hands. Seeing the seventh prince leave, Long Chen also turned to look back at the group of noble heirs that had previously participated in attacking Long Chen. After seeing him beat Zhou Yeyang to such a miserable state, they were all terrified and unmoving. Seeing Long Chen turn his gaze to them, their expressions all changed and retreated. Long Chen couldn't be bothered to deal with such a group of people. Although they had previously bullied Long Chen, the current him was no longer on the same level as them. And so the bitterness and anger he felt was also no longer as strong. He slowly walked up to Zhou Yaoyang, whose breath was becoming increasingly shallow. The light in his eyes was fading as if he might die at any moment. Long Chen, you shouldn't kill him. Let's send him to the Alchemist Guild. They should be able to heal him, advised Shi Feng. After all, this place wasn't the martial arena. This was a private fight, and if someone died, Long Chen would be unable to escape punishment. Don't worry. Heroes always escape death and villains cower for 1,000 years. Look, his eyebrows are like messy grass, his forehead is practically caved in. A small person like him won't die so easily. His complexion is still rosy, see? Said Long Chen. Fatty Yu and the others were speechless. Zhou Yaoyang was actually quite a handsome young man, so those descriptions of Long Chen were clearly off. Those changes were caused due to how strongly Long Chen had thrown him onto the ground. As for the expression being still rosy, that was due to the blood he was trying to choke up being stuck. Yes, it was rosy, but it was actually almost purple. It was completely different from the rosy complexion of someone healthy. Reaching into his robes, he took out a yaowan and placed it into Zhou Yaoyang's mouth. Long Chen slapped Zhou Yaoyang's face twice, forcing the yaowan down his throat. Although Long Chen hated Zhou Yaoyang to the extreme, he still remembered to act properly. It was true that he had heavily injured Zhou Yaoyang, but he definitely wouldn't let him die. With his personally refined healing medicine, his internal organs would all be protected. As for his outer wounds, well, those were the problem of the Zhou family. All Long Chen needed was for him to not die. You guys, if you don't want Zhou Yaoyang to die, hurry up and bring him away, coldly said Long Chen to the noble heirs who were still just standing there in shocks. Only then did they recover and carefully lift Zhou Yang onto a table and bring him away. They also conveniently brought along Wang Mang, who was unconscious against the wall. You come and clean up the blood on the floor. Long Chen pointed to several other noble heirs. These people had often mocked Long Chen before, and although Long Chen wasn't prepared to attack them, making them do some work for him also relieved some of his anger. Those people who were pointed by Long Chen all shivered uncontrollably. Not daring to make a single sound, they all quickly cleaned up diligently. In just a short time, the floor was completely clean and even Wang Mang's teeth were all found. What was outside Long Chen's expectations was that the old lecturer only came an hour after the cleaning was done. That lecturer looked at Long Chen in confusion for a moment before starting his lecture. Long Chen couldn't help cursing. That old bastard was definitely paid off by Zhou Yaoyang, otherwise there was no way he'd be so late. He had originally thought that all scholars were good people inside, but this thinking of his was shattered today. Feeling cheated, the good impression Long Chen had had of the old man was completely lost. After enduring the boring lecture and eating lunch, they all hurried to the battle skill pavilion. Fatty Yu and the others didn't go, instead heading home to take the medicine. Seeing Long Chen's actions today had shocked them, yet at the same time given them hope for their own futures, so they couldn't wait any longer. Long Chen perused several battle skills but felt they were all inadequate. Ordinary battle skills were no longer worthy of Long Chen's attention. He read through the battle skills very quickly, and in just 2 hours, 900 battle skills were all read by him without a single one satisfying him. No wonder they were free to them. They were all trash battle skills. Some were fragmentary or overly complicated, while also not being very strong. But the second floor of the battle skill pavilion could only be accessed by blood condensation experts. Additional battle skills of such low level weren't of much use to Long Chen. For movement he had the wind-chasing steps, and for battle he had the spirit of the bull. Even the best battle skills on this floor weren't much better than them, so learning them would be of minimal use. Long Chen couldn't help sighing. He was about to just give up on wasting time here when his gaze suddenly fell on the bottom corner of a bookshelf. Other bookshelves were all properly aligned so each book had its own space, but here there was a random pile of tomes. They were also battle skills, but some were already torn up and the others were all incomplete. In short, they were trash, but throwing them out would be too much of a waste. Thus they had just left them in this corner. A certain page had drawn Long Chen's eye when he had looked at that corner. That animal hide page was very worn out, but with Long Chen's powerful spiritual strength, he sensed an extremely ancient aura coming from the page. He reached out and took the page from the pile of trash. But when he did, his heart trembled. Maybe others didn't know what was so different about this animal hide. But with his powerful spiritual strength, he could clearly sense a terrifying power coming from it. The marks on the page were already ruined and faded. It had clearly been eroded by countless years of time. Long Chen guessed that the owner of this animal hide was an extremely terrifying existence. Otherwise, there wouldn't be such a terrifying will left behind after all these years. It was completely ridiculous that such a terrifying thing had now been thrown with the trash. Long Chen hurriedly started to study it. All that was on there was a diagram, the words on the diagram being extremely ancient and faded. There were 3 words. Split the heavens. What an absolutely domineering title for a battle skill. That was simply too arrogant, wasn't it? Long Chen frowned when he looked at the diagram. All he could see was there were 9 dots on it. Between the 9 dots was some indistinct thread, but it was too ancient and he couldn't tell whether it was originally like that or due to cracks from age. Time's up. All nobles' heirs must put back their manuals. A cold voice rang out just at this moment. Everyone couldn't help sighing. The time had passed too quickly. They were only allowed to come here once a month. Looking at the ruined page in his hands, Long Chen couldn't bear to part with it. His time was just too precious and he couldn't wait another month. Seeing everyone leave, Long Chen slowly started walking with them, but he kept the ruined animal hide in his hands. The blood condensation expert's expression turned colder, but Long Chen spoke up before he could speak. "Senior, I want to bring this destroyed animal hide page back home to study. Also, please accept this." Not letting him refuse immediately, Long Chen first took out a medicinal pill for him. The blood condensation expert was just about to scold him when he realized what the medicinal pill was. Reaching out to take it, he was astonished to find that it was a blood-condensing pill. It was precisely the thing that a blood condensation cultivator like him required. And most importantly, this was a middle-grade blood-condensing pill. It was tens of times more valuable than ordinary blood-condensing pills. Blood condensation cultivators needed to borrow the spiritual chi of heaven and earth to condense a blood meridian, allowing their blood chi to become more domineering and strengthening their physical body. As for the blood condensing pill, it could increase the efficiency of condensing one's blood several times. Such a pill could save at least half a year's worth of work. The expert's expression changed in the face of it, and in the end, he was unable to resist the allure of this medicinal pill. Remember, I didn't see anything. How could Long Chen not understand what he was saying? If he was found out, he wouldn't admit to any fault and Long Chen would be accused of stealing. Long Chen simply accepted this. Only after Long Chen left with the animal hide did the expert carefully examine the blood-condensing pill in his hand. I really never would have imagined he had such a treasure. I have to find out more about him. After saying this, the blood condensation expert disappeared deeper into the battle skill pavilion. Long Chen went straight home. Since he dared to take out the blood condensing pill, he was naturally unafraid of any investigation. The current him needed others to know he was an alchemist, one close to Grandmaster Yun Qi. That would hopefully prevent more troubles. Using this method, he was telling his unknown enemy that he, Long Chen, was no longer the same person. If they wanted to bring out small fries to deal with him, they'd have to think about the consequences. As he walked back, Long Chen was continuously contemplating just who was behind the curtains. At some unknown point, he ended up walking into a small alley. Suddenly, a huge net descended from the sky. Before Long Chen could even react, he was completely enveloped and whisked away. Chapter 16 Enmity with a Princess. Just as Long Chen was wondering how could draw out the puppet master behind the curtains, a huge net descended from above and completely trapped him before he could react. The net's design was extremely intricate. It immediately tightened up as soon as it had enveloped Long Chen, firmly trapping him within. Just as Long Chen was about to struggle, he was whisked high into the air. Only now did he realize that there was a huge hawk eagle above his head. The hawk eagle was not a magical beast, but was a regular wild beast. But due to how large and docile it was a favorite for experts to ride on. This hawk eagle was clearly just a mount, but it was too late for any regrets from Long Chen. He had been careless and deserved to have been ensnared. Soaring hundreds of meters into the air, Long Chen felt queasy just looking down and didn't dare to move an inch. He hoped the net was strong enough. If it broke and Long Chen ended up falling to the ground from this height, even 10 lives wouldn't be enough. Even if he was granted some kind of divine capabilities, falling from such a height would turn him into a flat paste. Humph, what a bold slave to dare bully my little brother. A clear, lovable voice rang out from atop the hawk eagle. The voice was very beautiful, but the anger contained within caused Long Chen to realize something: the situation wasn't good. No matter how Long Chen tried to move about in the net, he was unable to see who was atop the hawk eagle. He was afraid to say anything because if this woman were to angrily let go, he would be screwed. Long Chen closed his mouth and didn't say anything, letting the person assume he was afraid. That woman also didn't say anything in response to Long Chen's silence. Seeing a large mountain, she urged her mount to fly over. That mountain was exactly Sunset Mountain, but the situation was completely different from when Meng Qi had brought him. Last time he was atop a mount, this time he was carried by one in a trap. And furthermore, this time the descent was extremely unsteady, a far cry from last time's slow and stable descent. The treatment this time wasn't so good. Just when there were 30 meters left, Long Chen was dropped down. Although he had made some preparations and protected his body, to be thrown from such a height still caused him extreme dizziness. You brazen slave. If I don't give you a proper lesson today, you won't know how to respect your masters. Fury blazed in Long Chen's eyes. Now that they were on the ground, if he didn't properly give her nose a twist, then she wouldn't know who was her elder Long. Although he knew she was a woman, when his eyes fell on her, he was completely shocked. She was a slender 17-year-old with large curves in all the right places. She was wearing white robes with a jade belt that caused her chest to become even more pronounced. What stunned Long Chen most of all was her willowy eyebrows, her peach-like eyes, her jasper nose, and her small mouth that had a trace of anger that gave him a different sense of beauty. "Hey slave, where do you think you're looking?" angrily said the woman when she saw Long Chen's eyes continuously roving around her. His originally fading anger was once more aroused when she called him a slave again. Long Chen sneered, "Little girl, have you taken the wrong drugs? Or did you eat so much you started talking crap? Why have you brought me here? Or is it that you've become enticed by this master slooks that you can't help wanting to take the errant path?" The angry and regretful expression he had along with his words angered the woman so much that her whole face turned red. "You shameless scoundrel! You dared to bully my little brother. Today, I'm going to relieve my brother's anger for him. And with a face like yours, even if this lady was struck blind, I wouldn't even consider you," angrily retorted the woman. "Your little brother?" Long Chen was a bit confused. My little brother is the 7th Prince Chu Feng. I'm taking revenge on you for harassing him today." That woman was precisely Chu Feng's blood sister Chu Yao. She was the empire's 3rd princess. The Phoenix Cry Empire had 7 princes and 3 princesses, and Chu Yao and Chu Feng were the youngest of them. Chu Yao had seen Chu Feng come home completely frightened and acting very strange. When asked what the problem was, Chu Feng had been so frightened that he wouldn't tell anyone anything. Chu Yao had learned of what happened through overmeans. Man Huangho's noble heir had invited Chu Feng, so she quickly found out everything that had happened. As his big sister, Chu Yao refused to let the matter of Long Chen frightening Chu Feng go. But as a princess she couldn't act too excessively in public, so she had captured Long Chen secretly on his way home. Long Chen had been busy thinking of other things and hadn't expected to be acted upon within the imperial capital. Due to his guard being down, he had been completely ensnared in someone's trap. I seem to recall that I didn't actually do anything to your little brother, frowned Long Chen. You slave, you scared my brother witless. The penalty for this is death. Do you not even understand who is royalty and who is not? Coldly asked Chu Yao. Being repeatedly called a slave, Long Chen's anger soared and he cursed, You idiot woman, don't think that just because you're a lady I won't dare to handle you. Don't press Master Long, or Master Long won't hesitate. You absolute scoundrel. In all of Chu Yao's life, there had been no one who would speak to her like this. Her entire body was trembling in rage from being cursed by Long Chen. A jade palm came down to attack Long Chen. What surprised Long Chen was that Chu Yao was actually a strong person at the 9th heaven stage of qi condensation. That palm carried with it a blazing explosion, and what was most astonishing was that this was at least a middle-grade mortal battle skill. Long Chen was able to sense a strangeness from that palm, and although he wasn't afraid, he preferred not to clash with her using brute force. Just when that jade palm was about to land on Long Chen used a quick footwork and lightly pushed on her hand, causing her palm to go wide and hit nothing. Long Chen had gently and easily dispatched Chu Yao's attack that had contained all her power. All of her force seemed to have hit cotton and was dissipated. Scoundrel, you dare run! Chu Yao cutely raged and quickly turned on the ground. She was like a graceful butterfly as yet another palm shot towards him. Long Chen was once more infuriated by her insults. How could such a pretty woman say such vulgar things? He continued to dodge over and over, noticing that although Chu Yao's cultivation base was high, it was extremely superficial. Perhaps she couldn't even match someone at the 5th heaven stage of qi condensation. Although her attacks were powerful, they were too inflexible. She also continued to use only one move against him over and over. Whether he dodged or blocked, she only continued with that one attack. As this continued, Long Chen eventually started to smile. Scoundrel, what are you laughing about? Having failed to strike Long Chen after so long and seeing Long Chen's stifled smiles, her anger could no longer be contained. You bastard, you don't even know any martial arts. Come fight me head-on if you have any skills. Long Chen finally couldn't suppress his laughter anymore. His previous anger vanished into smoke. This was the first time he had ever encountered such an interesting woman. Chu Yao's face turned green, viewing Long Chen's current actions as the greatest kind of insult. You bastard! Suddenly she gave up her martial arts attack and came at him like an ordinary person without any training. This was greatly out of Long Chen's expectations. He had never seen such a method of fighting before. He hurriedly reached out his arms to try to push her away. The current Chu Yao had gone crazy and she didn't even seem to see Long Chen's hands as she continued her charge. Long Chen's large hands then ended up tightly grabbing onto Chu Yao's chest. The soft unknown feeling caused Long Chen's eyes to open wide. As for Chu Yao, when she felt a pair of large hands there, it was as if she was struck by lightning and she went completely rigid in disbelief. Sorry, it was a mistake. Long Chen hastily tried to explain as he quickly took back his hands. Bastard, I'll kill you. Chu Yao suddenly grabbed onto his arm and bit down tightly onto his shoulder. No matter what Long Chen tried, she wouldn't let go, and it was becoming increasingly painful. Angry and pressured, Long Chen didn't even think before using his hand to spank Chu Yao. The soft feeling enraptured Long Chen, but the pain from his arm quickly brought him back to his senses. Let me go or I'll continue spanking you, threatened Long Chen. A sharp pain came from his elbow as Chu Yao lightly snorted. She continued to bite down tightly on his shoulder. Furious from the increasing pain, Long Chen raised his large hand and spanked her 3 more times, each with great force. She let out a pained groan and tears even started coming out. On one hand she felt pain, but on the other she felt wronged. But no matter what, she wouldn't let go. But what surprised Chu Yao was that after he swatted her bottom 3 times, he stopped. No matter how she continued biting, he moved no longer. Quite a while passed. Maybe it was due to how her mouth was starting to hurt, or maybe it was due to being tired, but Chu Yao slowly loosened her cherry lips. Long Chen's arm and clothes were completely covered in blood now. Long Chen sighed, "Have you relieved your anger?" Chu Yao looked at Long Chen and saw that there wasn't any anger on his face. Instead, there was a faint sad melancholy. For some unknown reason to her, this caused her heart to tremble slightly. "Why'd you stop?" For some reason, Chu Yao actually decided to ask this. She regretted it as soon as she said it and her face turned completely red. I'm not that good at hitting women." There was no anger in his voice. He tore of his sleeve, revealing that a part of his flesh had practically been bitten off. He then tried to use that torn-off sleeve to bandage himself. That one sentence of his caused her face to turn even redder and her anger actually faded away. Seeing that Long Chen was completely unable to properly bandage his arm with one hand, she unexpectedly reached out her and took the bandage, gently saying, "Let me help you bandage it." You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.